The meeting to order for the Local Agency Formation Commission, March 2nd, 2020 at 9:03. Please conduct roll call.
Commissioner Orth,
Here.
Commissioner McCowan,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Huff,
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Here.
Commissioner Bazzani, here, Commissioner Winkle.
Here.
Okay, I am going to move up item number 3 to under 1, other business. We have a request for an off-agenda item. Commissioner Orth, would you like to explain and what, the emergency that we might be under to have this item and hear it today, but it will take a 4/5 vote.
Yes. The virus is rapidly turning into a pandemic, and between our next meeting and this meeting, we need to direct staff, I believe, to take any measures needed to function during the coronavirus pandemic, such as Zoom or remote meeting issues. So I'm asking to add that as an agenda item for discussion so that we can direct staff to expend any funds necessary to respond.
That is the request. It'll take a motion to discuss this as an off-agenda item. Supervisor McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's an excellent point, but it's hard to say that the fact of the virus came to our attention
Madam
after
Chair?
the agenda was published.
I believe we need a motion before we have a discussion.
Well, I think we're
having
discussing.
discussion on whether to add it to the agenda or not. It's a two-part thing. First, we'd have to make the right findings to add it to the agenda, and then at the appropriate time, we would discuss it.
So
Commissioner, why don't you,
I'd make a motion that we have this item added to the agenda, and I'm open to discussion.
but we need to make the findings if it's clearly an emergency
An
item.
urgency item?
So we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And I will go to public comment. Anyone having public comment? Seeing no one come forward, it's back to the commission. Further comments?
Well, the comment is...
Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The normal finding would be this came to the attention of the commission after the agenda was published, and there's a need to take action before we meet again. It's easy to meet the second half, I think, but I'm not sure how we say that the commission wasn't aware of the issue.
I think that can be explained, Commissioner, with all due respect to you, of what has occurred in Washington State right now, where there has been a death, and they don't know where the virus could have come from, and they feel people are, it's being undetected in communities. So I think that's the whole consideration here, and this has only occurred in the last maybe 48 hours.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if
That's-
Commissioner Orth wants to.
Actually, Madam Chair, I appreciate your explanation. That's sufficient for me.
Okay. Any other
I
comments?
have a question. What are you recommending that we do if the virus does hit here pretty hard as far as remote?
First, before we go on for further
Right.
discussion, we need to vote that we can go forward as off-agenda item. And again, it'll take a 4/5 vote. Clerk, please conduct the roll call.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes?
Commissioner Brown.
Yes. Okay, now the item is up.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Commissioner, well, I think we have a comment.
Well, we can make a motion. I just want to know how the process will work, so I understand the process, and I'd like to know how much we're going to spend on this.
I doubt we know that, but I do think the county health officer will be directing each elected body on how to respond to this fairly soon. I believe Friday is when they started posting information. I do think the county health officer has a lot of information already up and is tracking this, and will be able to direct our staff on how to respond based upon the information that they're getting day to day.
And actually, she is on a statewide and I think national
Right.
phone conference. I don't know if it's daily or not, but throughout the United States they are preparing, and now it's more of an emergency than what was originally thought.
So the motion I would make would be to authorize and direct staff to take any measures needed to function during the coronavirus pandemic. That's broad and doesn't make any direct, it's asking staff to work with the medical officer, basically,
Public health
the
officer.
public health officer.
I'll second his motion, just so that we check with either legal or county council as a whole. I guess I'm assuming that they would do that.
Supervisor, Commissioner McCowan.
Thank you, Madam
sorry.
Chair. So is the intent that, for instance, if necessary, cases start occurring here, the health officer wants to limit public meetings,
Yes.
we would, perhaps staff could provide for teleconferencing or something like that, or,
Yes,
okay.
exactly. And other measures necessary to conduct business of LAFCO moving forward.
I'm always nervous about the blank check. but-
Yeah, me too. But I'm also asking, did we teleconference, where would we do that?
It would all have to be listed on the agenda.
I know, but am I gonna go to a room somewhere and do a teleconference? Am I gonna do it in my office?
You can do it from your office if it's ADA accessible and open to the public.
No, it's not. Anyway, these are the questions
Well,
that
I
I
think
come up with.
we just need to figure it out, and very possibly we will need to hold an executive committee meeting to, ferret out all the information and what can occur or not occur.
And I'm just concerned we have a limited budget, how much we're gonna spend on this to do it, so. I know we have reserves, but it'd be better if I knew the cost, but if we don't know the cost.
No, I don't know whether we have to purchase Zoom software and distribute it to this. I really don't know the extent in which to set up the teleconferencing. That would be something I think staff would be capable of should it happen, and give us emails as
Madam
it
Chair.
occurs.
Commissioner?
So the idea of the teleconference, there's nothing requiring us to be videoed. Participated with many county conferences via telephone. And, in my case, it's been from City Hall, and it's open to the public. So, the measures of using actual video conferencing isn't necessarily an expense we'd have to do. But I was to understand part of the motion was also any educational needs or antibacterial needs is what I think we would be covering the costs of as an agency. Just me personally, I asked to make sure that there was Purell at my desk today, and I wiped down my arms of my chair. I'm not panicked or worried about the state we're at right now. Unfortunately, we're finding out this morning that the CDC just did not put out the approved testing kits that other countries have already been using, and we might be a couple of weeks behind the 8 ball right now. So I support Commissioner Orth's interest and suggestion that we take preventative measures going forward. Thank you.
Commissioner?
I've made my second.
Okay. Any other discussion? We'll have staff, do you have comment?
We would work with the county public health officer to figure out the next steps should that occur, and we will communicate with you as we find out more.
So we have a motion and a second, and you did get that, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
So please conduct the roll call vote.
Excuse me. Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes. And at the direction of the chair, if we need to have an executive committee meeting, special meeting, we can call that.
And I hope we're here in April.
Literally. Okay. All righty. So that has taken some time. I do want to remind commissioners that we do have a 9:30 timed item, and that is a public hearing. So we're going to go forward with number 2 on our agenda, public expression. Anyone that would like to speak to items not on the agenda, you're very welcome to come forward and address the commission. Seeing no one come forward, it's back to the commission and our business. Is there any other business, number 3, other than what we just conducted? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent calendar. Commissioner McCowan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did add some suggested changes to the minutes.
And if you could cite, which page?
I actually had one on 3, and I don't quite have it
I have one
marked,
on 3.
unfortunately, but on page 4, 4D, the second bullet point, I actually thought Commissioner Ward had raised that issue. It indicates I raised both of those issues. An easy fix would just be to say that, strike my name and say Commissioners recommended.
Okay.
That's fine.
I can agree to that change.
Page 5, item 8, it says, bottom line, Commissioner McCowan directed, and on the next page, it says at the top, Commissioners Ward and McCowan directed, and we don't direct. I think that an individual commissioner, I think, suggested might be the correct word, or recommended.
Okay.
And these are just semantics that, as you get used to commission speak, so they're really excellent minutes, but it's just normally the way we phrase things. So in this third bullet at the top of page 6, under item 8C, AB5 is a recently imposed, which is actually correct, but we would probably say adopted, recently adopted. And then 8E, the second bullet point, it says that I provided an update on Ukiah City Council meetings in which staff and council revisited the city's SOI and directed staff to pursue the 84 SOI, and actually the direction was to pursue a reduced version of the 84 SOI. So I would suggest striking the in front of 1984 and inserting a reduced version of. And that was all I had.
Okay.
one.
Staff, did you get, just one moment. Did you get his comments?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, on the minutes, page 3, under 3B, the last paragraph, Commissioners Orth and Ignacio were appointed to the executive committee. I need to also state that you're on the executive committee as well.
I think the chair automatically is.
Yeah, but it should be
It should be stated in the
stated there, I
minutes.
think, so
Okay.
people know.
I can agree.
And that's all for the minutes. I do have some comments on the financial
Okay.
claims.
Any other suggested changes to the minutes? Okay, and staff, you have all those?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Why don't we first entertain a motion for the minutes?
I made,
Madam Chair,
Yes.
second.
I guess I made it, he seconded.
Okay, so the motion, Commissioner Ignacio, was yours?
Okay.
Or were you the second? Who was?
I guess I was the first that I jumped on here, so I'll be the first, he's the second.
with the amendments suggested.
With
I think
the
you were
suggested-
first.
All right. Please conduct the vote.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes. Okay, moving on to claims and financial report. This is February 2020. Commissioner Ward?
Yes, just had some questions for staff. Scott Brown didn't bill us for February?
They were not able to get their invoice out in time for the agenda packet.
Okay, so it'll be next month.
Yes.
And then, I know you and I talked, but the A87 costs went way up. Did you ever find out why? I mean, mainly it was the, what do they call it? Information services, it's 1,200.
Correct, I
For the last
think,
several years, didn't have that high.
yes, and I did ask them to confirm the numbers, which they did, and my understanding is that it has to do with indirect costs associated with the GIS and the televised services. We get billed monthly or semi-monthly for the time spent, but there are indirect costs associated, which come through the A87.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't have that budgeted in as well for this fiscal year. And I think
Correct.
later on in your next year's budget, you did have a pretty low number as well. Anyway, just bring that up because it was significantly higher. On your budget application tracking, thank you very much for putting the deposits in there. But you need to add the deposit for the Moore application because it did show that the Moore application is into the positive now. But I know he made a deposit, I can't remember what it was.
Sure, and it was for last month. Would you like them monthly? or-
Well, then the Irish Beach Moore annexation would not show a remaining budget for this particular year then. That's all I'm saying. But it's minor detail. The other thing is bookkeeping. Is our clerk up to speed now for bookkeeping?
We share the responsibilities for bookkeeping.
Because it's a big difference in hourly rates for that. So I know our bookkeeping could be a lot less if our clerk did the bookkeeping versus, the hourly rate that it would be. So just bring that up. Our bookkeeping expenses the last several months have been a couple $100. Now it's up to 500. So I just was concerned about that.
That was for preparation of the budget estimates, but thank you, we'll look at that.
And then on the expenses, office expenses, it looks like you've added in the staples, but the pennies trophies was not, even though you actually have it paid. Pennies trophies wasn't added into the office expense for February.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Okay? And then the Mendocino CSD, we used an outside analyst on that.
Yes, outside consultant.
Outside consultant. It's a woman, I believe, right? Jennifer? Are you going to use her in the
Jessica.
future?
As she's available.
Okay. Do you know what her hourly rate is? It was just a lump sum, so I
We
don't
did a
know.
lump sum.
Yeah, so it was a lump sum for just that. Okay. And so there was an hourly rate. Okay, I think that's all I had.
Commissioners, other comments?
Motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Okay. Please conduct a roll call vote.
Commissioner Orth,
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Chair Brown.
Yes. Thank you all. We have a few more minutes. Matters for discussion, we have the annual legislative platform and priorities. Staff?
Thank you. LAFCO has a legislative policy that directs the commission to annually adopt a legislative platform and priorities, and it's primarily to assist the commission and staff in responding to calls for legislative support. The platform before you today, which is on page 15, is consistent with last year's platform and also with the CALAFCO legislative platform, save for one change, which is 4.6 on page 16 of your staff report, of your agenda packet. Was added to support the recognition of extreme fire events and disaster preparedness when considering growth and service delivery issues. And this language supports recent legislation that requires agencies, including LAFCO, to review local hazard mitigation plans and general plan safety elements in reviewing applications. It also recognizes the increasing frequency of devastating wildfires throughout the state. So that has been added. Again, it is to help us respond to legislative calls for support or opposition. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we do have two commissioners. We'll go first to Commissioner Orth.
Yes, does this require GIS mapping of the state responsibility area, which does exist within all the fire districts? Fire districts, go ahead and answer.
No, it doesn't require any work on our part at this time. Mostly it just helps us determine whether or not our LAFCO would support legislative actions related to this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
I just wanted to report that Policies and Procedures Committee met, and we approved it as well, Jerry and I. John was gone, but you were there in spirit.
Yeah,
But we approved it, and so I would recommend that the commission approve it as well.
second.
Is there any public comment on this particular item? Seeing none, we do have a motion on the floor with a second. Conduct the vote, please.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes,
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Huff?
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Yes.
Chair Brown?
Yes. Okay. A few more minutes. Okay, I
Madam
think-
Chair, can I make a
Yes.
suggestion? If I could have a few moments to call in our legal counsel?
Okay, so we'll need to get legal counsel on the phone.
Yes.
And you think it'll take longer than 3 minutes?
Probably just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
3-minute break.
3-minute break. I'm not letting you do that. We just got started.
You could do workshops, there's none.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, workshop items, and thank you, Commissioner Ward. There are none, and I do believe that the preliminary budget and work plan is going to take a lot longer, but we can move down to item number 8, and work plan, current and future proposals. That's going to take a while. But copies of any correspondence, did we receive any?
No.
Okay. Oh. We do have committee reports, but the committee policy and procedures did meet, and it'll probably
We'll have
be a little bit
A little
longer.
more report, yes.
Okay. Do commissioners have reports, comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. That item is off. CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
We don't have a new legislative report this time. We do have a notice which is included in your packet on the last page that Pamela Miller, the executive director for CALAFCO, is stepping down, and so they are currently looking for a new executive director.
I think she's been there maybe 4 or 5 years.
7.5 years.
Is it 7.5? I didn't remember that on the,
In the letter.
she was with the agency, but I didn't think she was in charge that long, but maybe so.
Time flies.
Time flies. Okay. We are going to have a short break, so staff can get our legal counsel on the phone. Please do so. Commissioners, probably get your packets ready for the public hearing. Welcome, Scott, and we haven't opened yet. We have about one more minute. And we are shy one commissioner. And we cannot be shy that commissioner.
And that commissioner is not shy.
That's true.
Chair Brown,
Good point.
would it be appropriate for me to recuse myself at this time?
We're not in
I think
session
we,
yet.
Oh, I guess we're not.
No,
Okay.
we're not in session yet.
We have to wait until we
Yeah.
start it.
Scott? Can we start the public hearing with one commissioner not in the room that intends to be back here?
I think it is sizable place.
We have another minute.
Okay. Okay. So it is 9:31, and this is a continued public hearing for Weger Detachment from the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District. And we're going to begin the proceedings at this time. And I'd like to ask the clerk if the proper notice was previously established. I believe it was.
Go ahead.
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you. And I also want to ask the clerk, is there any other correspondence or telephone calls? Have they all been noted?
I believe so. I will let our executive officer answer that question.
Yes, all correspondence has been included in the packet and then noted in past public hearings.
Commissioner Huff, since the public hearing is open at this point, do you have a comment?
Yes, due to my employment with the healthcare district, Mendocino Coast Healthcare District, I'm going to recuse myself from the hearing.
Okay. All right. Would you like to take the place at the dais? Not dais, but I guess it is dais. Table? At the table?
The adjunct to the dais, the island, as I prefer over here.
All righty. So let the records note that one commissioner has recused himself and the alternate has taken the seat.
The alternate, if we can just have the alternate name for the record, I think it'd be appropriate.
Okay, the alternate, and also, so Commissioner Huff has recused himself, and Jennifer Bazzani, alternate, has been seated.
I have paper copies if you want to share.
So I want to explain to everybody that's here today the procedures, so you're aware of them. Since it has been a while, we are going to conduct everything just like we would If it were the beginning, it is not. We're going to hear from staff first. They will give a presentation, and they will also talk about any additional written reports, and all of their comments will be received by the commission. And the commission at that time can ask questions of staff. And then we will move forward to hearing from the public. And the public can get up, know that you have 3 minutes to speak for each individual that wants to speak under this. And at the end, we will, at the end of public comment, it's back to the commission. The commission can ask questions of either speakers or of staff. And once that is done, we will be closing the public hearing. There can be no motion until the public hearing is closed, and then the matter is before the commission. So we're going to move forward, and we're going to begin with staff report.
Can I ask one clarification?
Just one moment, please.
If people have comments.
Hey, hang on. Please come up to the microphone, and yes, you will be given your time as well.
Oh, no, I know that. I just had a clarification about the procedure. If people have spoken previously in public comment, may they speak again? That's my only question, to clarify.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
I'm Lisa Weger. I'm the petitioner.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, yes, you are. And I did leave that out of the process because after the staff report, I believe the applicant will have 10 minutes, and then since there is conflict here, the hospital district will also, healthcare district will also get time to speak, same amount of time. Okay? Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the question was, would members of the public, even though they may have spoken previously, be allowed to speak again? And I think probably they would, since we do have new communications in the file.
Thank you. Thank you. And I thought I made that clear, but I guess I did not.
Oh, I'm sorry, I maybe didn't hear it.
Okay. Well, it was probably my fault. All right, so let's begin.
Thank you. I just want to state for the record that our legal counsel, Scott Brown, is on the phone, and that there is a 5-second delay on the video. So if you have a question for him, please give him a little chance to respond. I want to thank the county for working through the tax share agreement resolution in time for this hearing to occur. This is the continued public hearing to consider public testimony and the executive officer's report for the proposed Weger Detachment from the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District. The packet for this item includes the prior staff reports as attachments. So those are include the October 7th, 2019 staff report packet, as well as the December 2nd, 2019 executive officer's report. The video links and those staff reports were provided to all of the commissioners as a reminder before this hearing occurred. The presentation today focuses on activity and correspondence since the December 2nd hearing. The December 2nd hearing was continued to allow time for necessary step in the application process related to the Revenue and Tax Code Section 99 tax share agreement to occur. That was completed and passed by resolution by the Board of Supervisors on February 25th, 2020. The tax share agreement resolution reallocates a portion of the district's property taxes in the amount of $5,456 from the detachment area according to the proportional allocation that was calculated by the Mendocino County Auditor Controller, and that will take place upon approval of the detachment. The district provided hospital use data for the proposed detachment area, which showed that over a roughly 10-year period, residents from the proposed detachment area visited district facilities 69 times. This results in approximately 7 patient visits and $19,420 in associated revenue a year from a year from the proposed detachment area. In comparison to overall annual hospital use based on associated revenue in fiscal year 2017-18, the estimated annual use of district facilities from the proposed detachment area is approximately 0.04%. A recent letter from the district attorney states that the proposed boundary is inappropriate based on the fact that there has not been adequate study analyzing potential weather, mudslides, floods, fallen trees, snow-covered roads, and other conditions, and this was provided in a letter from the healthcare district's attorney. In consultation with the local emergency medical services agency for Mendocino County, which is Coastal Valleys EMS, staff reviewed 8 years of CAL FIRE dispatch data to estimate the level of ambulance services provided by the district to the proposed detachment area, which showed that primarily inland and secondarily air ambulance providers routinely served the proposed detachment and adjacent areas. The district also provided information on the Measure C parcel tax, contiguous parcel exemption, and the consolidation of legal parcels, which showed that 419 assessor parcel numbers, or APNs, in the proposed detachment area. The district is levying the Measure C parcel tax on 248 of those parcels, resulting in a annual Measure C parcel tax revenue of $35,712. So that estimates the revenue loss to the district if the detachment is approved. An October letter from the district's attorney stated that an initial study is required for the proposed detachment application based on an interpretation that CEQA exemptions only apply to changes of organization where there is no change in the geographical area. Based on consultation with LAFCO Council, the general rule or common sense CEQA exemption does apply to this proposal, and a detailed CEQA compliance justification has been included as attachment 2 to your staff report. That is located on page 24 of your agenda packet. The most recent and past letters from the district and the chief petitioner are included in the staff report. The most recent being February 20th and 22nd on pages 30 and 43 respectively. In processing this landowner petition-initiated application, staff has received multiple phone calls and correspondence from landowners and residents in the proposed detachment area in support of detachment, and 14 landowners and residents provided public testimony at the October hearing in support of the detachment. We did receive 3 comment letters in support of the application back in November. Attachment 1, which is on page 23 of your agenda packet, is a summary of the financial effects of detachment, and attachment 3, which is on page 25 of your packet, includes the required factors for consideration by the commission. In summary, residents and landowners within the detachment area are presently receiving limited health care services from the district, and approval of the detachment application would not result in a loss of revenue likely to affect the continuing viability of the district. The recommendations are listed on page 19 of your agenda packet, and that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions of staff?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. No questions now. I think everything was contained within the packet. I thank you, and thank you for going through it with us. I'd like to ask a representative, the applicant, to come forward, and know you have approximately 10 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Weger, and I'm the petitioner. And then I wanted to clarify that if any of our supporters here want to comment, they will do that after I speak. Is that correct?
They would do so during public expression.
Oh, which is after, is after I speak?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so, well, I have been here many times and talked to you, and you have read many of my letters. But before I begin, I guess I also want to thank the thorough job that staff has done in creating an excellent record for this whole process. And also, I wanted to thank the people that were involved in I know it was a long process, or it took a long time to get the Section 99 approval through the Board of Supervisors, and I appreciate resolving that so that we could have this meeting today that we had postponed in December. So I think we're all familiar with the history, right? I'm going to take very little time. I think we're all familiar with the history. 50 years ago, they put the Comshy School District into the healthcare district, or incorporated that, and without thinking about the boundaries and who is going to be driving where for their healthcare. I've also discussed in detail in my letters what I felt were the deficiencies in the enactment of Measure C, in the sense that landowners who lived in our area would not have thought that they were included in the district, and had they gone to the district's website, they would have not known that they were in the district. That the next issue is that, or the next point I'd like to make briefly, is that many of the landowners that are even here today are 20 minutes from Ukiah and an hour and 20 or 30 minutes to Fort Bragg. You know, it's ridiculous for those people to be in such an eastern boundary and included in the hospital district. When we filed the initial petition, we have and still do have overwhelming support of the landowners. I think it was something like 80 or 90%. And the last thing I want to say is, with the details that were disclosed in the hospital district's most recent letter, I think it's very clear that the impact on the hospital is minimal, that they will be losing roughly $35,000 a year in income. Their budget in 2018, according to their profit and loss statement, was $54 million. So this is 37/1,000th of their budget. And so I think it's very easy to say that losing us is fair to the landowners who are being burdened with this, or the detachment is fair to the landowners, and it has an insignificant impact to the hospital. And so, do you have any questions for me? And you've read my letter, so that may have provoked questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions of the applicant?
John does.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So thank you. I think your position is fairly clear, but I just want to, ask it in a particular way. So your effort in pursuing this detachment is not any effort to invalidate Measure C. It's, I believe in your mind, it's an effort to correct what is essentially a mapping error and remove an area, a geographical area from the district that in your view never should have been included in the district.
That's absolutely right. If we had intended to invalidate Measure C, we would have lawyered up and handled it completely differently. We actually took the approach that we didn't want to have to be forced to hire lawyers or come in with that sort of approach, and we felt that the fair and reasonable approach was to do a detachment that was correcting a mistake that I believe was made 48 years ago or 49 years ago by now, by the incorporation of our area into the hospital district. And I've explained why I thought it went unnoticed for all that time.
Thank you.
Yes.
It appears there's no other
Okay.
questions. Thank you. Hospital Care District, would you like to come up and know that you have 10 minutes to present whatever information you'd like to provide for the commission?
Yes, thank you. My name is Wendy Wiles. I'm here on behalf of the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District. And first, thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity to be able to speak with you regarding this matter. First of all, we know why we're here. We're here because there's a detachment proceeding that is seeking to take 35,000 acres of property outside of the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District. And the basis for the request for detachment was that the people within the detachment area do not use the services of Mendocino Coast Hospital. And we know now that that's simply not true. People within the detachment area do, in fact, use the hospital services. The justification on the detachment petition, which is found at page 69 of the staff report, specifically states, and I quote, "The landowners in proposed detachment area are not served by MCHD." End quote. However, based on the data that has been provided, staff has recognized that this allegation that the detachment area is not served is simply not correct. That should be the end of this detachment proceeding. The basis upon which it was brought is simply not accurate. The fact that now it seems to switch to, well, maybe it's not used that much, is really not the issue. The point is, people within the detachment area do in fact use these hospital services. Now, why does this matter to the hospital district? Why are we here opposing this petition? The reason that the hospital district has opposed this petition is because it is a critical access hospital. And what is a critical access hospital? A critical access hospital is a hospital that provides vital healthcare services to people in rural communities. That is exactly what we are faced with. The hospital provides healthcare services to people in a rural community. It's not a highly populated area, but the point is that the services that the hospital district provides to the detachment area are exactly what the hospital is supposed to provide, being able to serve a rural community, and that's what is occurring. So what is at issue here? What is at issue is the implication of whether or not Parcel C should still be taxed on the detachment area. Now, Parcel C, as you know, was a tax that was in 2018 and was to be levied on the parcels within the detachment area, among other areas. The ballot measure sought to provide services, and I will quote, "to maintain local emergency room services, to attract and retain high-quality doctors and nurses, to maintain local ambulance and related 911 services, to make critical repairs and upgrades to medical equipment and facilities, to maintain local surgical services, and to maintain local obstetric services," end quote. The funding through Parcel C was established to be able to provide these very services. The funds are critical to being able to provide the services to the community that they serve, which includes not only the hospital district's outer boundaries, but also the detachment area. And the idea that somehow, because this amount is not a significant component of the budget, that it should be disregarded is not appropriate. If we take away these funds from this detachment area, we are impacting the ability of the hospital district to provide the services that the voters voted on. Parcel C was voted on and passed by a 2/3 required vote. Now, what's interesting is the suggestion is that somehow the people who voted on this didn't really know what they were voting on. There's actually no evidence of that. That's just a statement that's been made. The ballot materials that went out to all of the voters clearly identified what the voter materials were, and there has been no challenge to the voter materials. The entire argument is based upon a map that was posted on a website which does not have anything to do with the actual parcel tax election. The people who pay property taxes know that they are paying property taxes in part to the hospital district. And when they received their ballots, and when they voted in favor of the parcel tax, they voted to make sure that additional funds could be provided for the parcel tax services that had been identified. When we look at the issue of the fact that this is services that are not being utilized, I'm always drawn to the comparison of what we do with other taxes. Taxes are not based on how much someone uses a service. Taxes are voted upon and then passed upon the population. Right now, you have two measures that are in election for tomorrow. Two school measures, one for Mendocino Unified, one for Ukiah Unified. If those pass, and the people who live within those areas, if one in Mendocino says, well, you know, my kids go to Ukiah, I shouldn't have to pay those taxes. That's not the way taxes work. If we had one in Ukiah and their kids attended Mendocino, they will still pay the taxes, even if they don't use the service. Similarly, when we're looking at services, if we have children that are attending a charter school And they say, well, my kids don't go to the actual unified school district. My kids attend a charter school, so I shouldn't have to pay. That's not the way taxes work. Taxes are not based on how much you use them. It's really no different than a city or county looking at something like fire protection or roads or any of the other types of services. When you pass a tax, the tax applies to all of those persons who are subject to the tax. When I look at the staff report, and it was referenced earlier today at page 20, and the staff report references that the revenue is small, that the use in the detachment area is minimal. First, what is most important is that it is an acknowledgement that the detachment area does in fact use these hospital services, and that is critical. That really should be the end of this discussion. But then we look further. The fact that the revenue is small is not a determinative factor. Revenue is small because the population is small, the area is small. The idea that the services are only being used on a minimal basis, we have a minimal population in this area. But when you think about it, how many people have in fact gone to this hospital from an area that probably has no more than 100 people? We're having approximately 8 visits a year from a population of only less than 100 people. That's not a small use of the hospital services. We also have to remember that what we're talking about is emergency services. When someone in the detachment area needs to have medical care, they want to know that medical care is available. And of course, medical care, both hospitals will always want to provide medical care. But what we're doing here is we're piecemeal taking out from the ability of a hospital district to be able to serve the people that are within their boundaries. The suggestion that somehow this is a mapping area, there's no evidence that this is a mapping area. What we're talking about are voters that voted in favor of a parcel tax to be levied to provide hospital services. It's also interesting to me that here we are talking about the minimal use of the hospital in the detachment area, and yet there has not been one single piece of paper that was submitted that shows any use by the detachment area in the Ukiah Hospital. All of the discussion has been whether or not the residents within the detachment area would use the services. And the issue has been and presented that no, the residents within the detachment area do not use the services. As we've said, this is simply not accurate. Although the detachment area admittedly has not numerous people coming, there's not numerous people living there. Where we are is the hospital district needs your support. The hospital district and the people in the community, the rural people in the community, need your support to know that they will be able to remain within the district. If LAFCO does not provide support now for the rural community, then when? If it is not LAFCO that can protect the hospital district and the detachment area, then who? This is the time to preserve the detachment area, the services that are being provided, that are admittedly are being provided within this detachment area, and make sure that this parcel tax, although a small amount from the area, will be able to be preserved so that the hospital district can continue to provide its services. Thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Yes, hang on just one moment. Questions? Commissioner?
Yeah, you referred to parcel C. Is that Measure C?
Sorry, yes,
That's
I'm
what she
sorry.
meant.
Yes,
Okay.
Measure C.
I
I
just wanted
apologize.
I wrote
Thank you.
that down as well.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Commissioner?
You also mentioned mapping area. Were you referring to a mapping error?
The mapping error.
Mapping error.
Yes.
All right, thank you. You also mentioned that Measure C that was voted on was to provide emergency care services as well as obstetric services, and that's the previous Measure C. Is it also true that I'm hearing this morning from KQED that Mendocino Coast District Hospital has suspended obstetric care? Is that?
I would let the representative of the hospital district be able to speak specifically to that issue.
What's your position with the hospital?
I'm the lawyer.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, no questions.
Okay, Commissioner?
Yes, in our packet, there's a statement of votes cast. When it was approved by 2/3 vote, Measure C. How many yes votes from the detached area? Do you know that?
I do, and I want to say, I think it was about, I don't want to misquote it, I think there were 43 total and 20-something in favor. It was not two-thirds vote within the detachment area.
Okay.
It was a majority, but not two-thirds.
What was the numbers again?
It's in our letter, so let me just check and make sure. Oh. 41 total votes and, how many? 23 affirmative.
23 affirmative. Okay. I have another question, too. Within our packet, it states that, and I'll read it, there are options available to these property owners already granted to many in the areas proposed for detachment to limit the amount they must pay within the existing rules of Measure C. What does that mean? Is it less than $144 per parcel?
You want to address?
I'm Shen Green with East Shore Consulting. We are consultants that assisted in Measure C. Within Measure C, there are a pair of provisions, actually one provision which allows for consolidation of, or excuse me, rather exemption of contiguous residential parcels. So if you have a parcel that is for residential use and you have additional parcels that surround it, which are also yours, and also being part of that same residence in essence, then you can request a consolidation down to a single charge of $144. Also, there are some parcels which have a MAP Act adjustment for consolidation, which we work with the county to consolidate. So not all of the parcel APNs receive a $144 charge. Some are consolidated and some are exempted by virtue of being contiguous residential parcels.
So they're paying less because they're consolidating their parcels?
Correct.
Not the $144 rate?
Or they're being exempted by virtue of the contiguous residential parcel exemption.
Okay, thank you.
So since, sir, since the passage of Measure C, how many actions have been taken by the Healthcare District Board of Directors for consolidation?
Consolidations, I believe there are, I don't have an exact number, but somewhere in the range of 15 to 20, I believe. Some are large, some are small individuals.
Have they all been approved?
Generally speaking, they've mostly been approved. There are a couple that require additional research for some of the larger individuals, mostly corporate concerns.
So those are still outstanding?
Some are, there's one or two, I believe, that are still outstanding to be resolved. We've been working with the county auditor controller's office to try to figure out how to process all of those for the larger ones. There are a handful of smaller ones that are very straightforward. Some of the larger ones are several hundred parcels in total.
Okay. Thank you.
One more
Commissioner?
question. I think it's in here somewhere I read that, is there a new parcel or a Measure C coming up to be voted on?
No,
No?
not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. No additional revenue that the district's looking into?
With respect to taxation,
Yes.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Hang on, please. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what Commissioner Ward may be referring to, there's a measure on the ballot, I believe, asking the district voters if they approve of a potential contractual arrangement with another agency.
Yeah, I
That
was going to
more or
bring
less
that up too,
accurate?
but I thought there was something else.
It happens to be titled Measure C.
And then I do have some questions.
Go forward, please.
So, page 32 at the bottom, there is, in your February 20th letter, there's discussion of various issues, and then it says, all this misses the main point the district is trying to make, which is that the district does provide crucial medical services to persons living within the proposed detachment area. So that is your main point. You're providing services in this area, therefore the area should remain in the district.
That's correct.
And then again, in a similar fashion on page 33, the second paragraph, the last couple of lines, the fact that Ms. Weger believes that the district and the LAFCO board failed in their duties 50 years ago when setting up the boundaries is irrelevant to the present issue, which is whether people living in the proposed detachment area use the district's facilities. Again, you say they do, therefore they're properly in the district.
That's correct, and then we've provided data showing that they do in fact use the services.
Correct. Now, would you also say, 'cause I would assume we probably find that there are people who live in Point Arena or Wallala who use the district services. Shouldn't those areas be included in the district using the same logic?
Well, it's not a matter of the same logic of including people in, because that there isn't a present proposal to be able to attach area to the district. What we're looking at here is that there's a proposal to detach and remove property, and yet we know that within that area right now, those people are in fact using the services.
Understood, but if the determining factor is simply that someone in that area uses the services they should be in, then wouldn't it equally apply to other areas not currently in the district, but we have people using those services at some level? Shouldn't they be in the district?
Well, within the boundaries of the district, they might want to choose to annex into the district, but what we're looking at here is whether they'll be subject to the parcel tax, and those people in those locations did not vote on the parcel tax.
Well, and there may be some disagreement, because Ms. Weger maintains what we're looking at is not whether they should pay a parcel tax, but whether they should be in the district.
Well, the issue, of course, is whether they're paying the parcel tax or not. The reason for wanting to detach is because they do not want to pay the parcel tax. And the claim is that they do not use the services. The effect is to avoid the payment of the parcel tax.
On what basis does the district say there's a likelihood that many of these parcels are owned by second homeowners?
Do you want to address that?
We took a look at both voter file and hospital records and did a cross-reference thereof to look for common addresses which were utilizing services at the hospital, and found several, the 69, which we had mentioned, occurrences. So there is a cross-reference between multiple data sets, including voter file information, hospital record, and property ownership records to try to determine exactly who votes in that area, who's been using services in that area, and what degree that population is using the hospital services.
Although we didn't exactly determine who in the detachment area votes and doesn't, we used the Ore Springs precinct as a proxy, but some of the voters, in fact, would probably vote in the Comsci district.
We utilized both the Ore Springs and one or two surrounding. I would note that if you look at the statement of vote, it's relatively limited as to the identifiers, and we believe that there's consolidation there within the names that you're seeing.
Right.
So I
And
don't know
that's
that Ore
common.
Springs is just Ore Springs in that case.
Right. One more question, and well, I'm not putting my, page 35. So the bottom of section 6, the last paragraph there, you say that LAFCO must conduct an initial study demonstrating LAFCO is certain that attachment petition will not affect the environment. What effects on the environment would you foresee? What's possible? What possible effect on the environment would there be?
Well, that's exactly what LAFCO has the responsibility for doing. So we kind of have an interesting issue here. The obligation of LAFCO is to determine with certainty that there is no possibility of any significant effect on the environment. We looked at the exemption, and it's not that no exemptions would apply, but we looked at a similar exemption, which is for Exemption 20, which provides that when you are having a boundary, when you are looking at a change and you're going to change boundaries, that you cannot use a categorical exemption number 20. And the implication then is that if you cannot use categorical exemption 20 when you have a boundary change, and here we would have a boundary change, that therefore, although you're not relying, your county council or council is not relying on that categorical exemption, the implication is if there is a boundary change, then you're going to have to consider something. You're going to have to look further. And so what happened here is the idea that common sense, it's a common sense exemption, not exemption, it's a common sense basis upon which the conclusion is that there will be no impacts. But one, it will be a boundary change, and two, there are no findings as to how that conclusion was determined. There wasn't an analysis that was done, there's just simply conclusions. And so our position was that analysis really should be done. There should be an analysis that takes into consideration the basis upon which the conclusion is that there is no possibility of any significant effect on the environment. And we haven't undertaken that analysis because that's the analysis that is required to be undertaken by LAFCO before it takes any steps really to consider this potential detachment. And so that was our position.
Thank you. Well, we'll presumably hear from the lawyers since this is a legal point, but you mentioned common sense. So on a common sense basis, I'm struggling to imagine what would be the air quality, water quality, all these other types of environmental impacts that are listed in an initial study. And so you say, well, the district didn't do that analysis, but in looking at whether the boundary line would properly be set at the area where it's proposed, Mr. Beek was able to come up with, well, gee, you know, you could have mudslides and floods and downed trees and snow. So yes, the district boundary is properly set where it is. So, you know, yet all of those potential impacts would occur anywhere along that stretch of road. So I just found it incongruous that you're able to say, based on threat of mudslide, flood, downed trees, the district boundary is properly set, and yet if someone wants to detach it, you claim that there could be significant impacts, but you're not able to name a single one.
I'm not claiming that there could be. What I'm saying is there's a responsibility under the California Environmental Quality Act that the analysis has to be undertaken by the agency that is seeking to approve a project that would result in the change in boundaries. And so the idea is that we must look at, well, how will this boundary change potentially impact the environment? Will there be an issue? I know Mr. Beek, and so you've already commented on that, that's talking about certain items that could exist with challenges that might be faced by trying to reach rural areas or inabilities to potentially reach one hospital versus another hospital. But that really should be looked at in more detail. And I know that when we first submitted our first letter, the idea was there should be an analysis done on how this will be impacted. The focus became, instead, initially it was there's no use, to now, well, it's only a small amount of use. And that's really not what we should be looking at. It's not, well, we need to move because we do not use these services, to then finding out that that was not accurate, that's not true, to then say, well, okay, but it's only a little bit. That's not the analysis that should be undertaken. There is clearly use within this area that is utilizing the hospital services, and that's what we should be focusing on for purposes of looking at the detachment.
Just one more, I think you're stating your case in the best possible terms, and you're being an effective advocate for your client, but I think you misspoke at one point where you said there's nothing in the record that would show the relative use between Coast District Hospital and inland hospitals, and yet on page 58 there is some analysis of emergency medical service response, which does show that when a ground ambulance is dispatched, 90% of the time it's inland, 10% coastal, based on the figures available. So that's a pretty good indicator. The bulk of service does go towards the inland hospital.
I apologize because initially, yes, there was an analysis done of hospital services, and it was focusing on certain elements, and yes, that was brought back into the current staff report, so I apologize for not including that. I was looking at the issue of the people that we know that live within the detachment area have data that shows that they're using the services, and we have heard that from the detachment, that people wouldn't want to use this hospital, or if they had a problem, they would go somewhere else, and I was referring to that.
Well,
So I
and-
apologize for any
And just one more
understanding.
comment, a lot of rhetoric gets stated on either side, but the central fact for LAFCO, I believe, is what are the proper boundaries of the district? And so a lot of the arguments used one way or another, to me, it really goes, do they go to, is this area properly in the district or not properly in the district? So.
And I think if we look at that, whether it's in or out of the district, when we have perhaps less than 100 people, and we can see that for the past 10 years, and then for the past 5 years, and in fact, the percentage over 5 years on an annual basis is greater than it was over 10 years, but we can see that they are in fact using these services.
And
It's
if
not
they-
that they're not using them, they are using them.
And if they continue to use, the district will continue to receive every dollar from providing those services. That won't change.
But if we're saying, well, we have 100 people and we have approximately 8 visits a year, if that's not enough, well, how many is it enough until someone says, well, okay, yes, I guess they really need to have this service? Is it 10 visits a year? Is it 15 visits a year? Where's the demarcation? Because we do know they are in fact using these services. And so the idea is, well, let's just change the boundary. And I don't think we should in any way suggest that this is just an idea that we want to change the boundaries because we want to make mapping correct. This is clearly related to Parcel C.
And I
Not
think
Parcel
that-
C, Measure C.
I think the 100 people is simply an estimate because many people don't register to vote. There's second homeowners, there's travelers in the area. So there's a lot of different factors that affect how many people might be in the area and might potentially make use of the services.
I mean, we've looked at and done it specifically, of course, by way of registered voters and what services. And then I know that East Shore,
Property ownership names,
yeah.
also property ownership names.
Please speak into the mic.
Also property ownership names, so we have captured the universe of people who list themselves as being within that area. This is not a capture of someone who fell off a bicycle on a road somewhere in that area. This is someone who reported an address as within that territory.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, regarding the initial study in CEQA, it was discussed with Commissioner McCowan. I'd like to hear from our attorney on the other side of it, too. I think it's important.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward has a question.
Yeah, did you heard the discussion on the initial study requirement that the district is saying that we're lacking? Can you comment on that?
Certainly. The fact is that we did consider their point and developed some supplementary information regarding the backup of the use of the general rule exemption. And I'm sure Luma would be happy to go over that with the commission.
Well, it's probably in our packet, and we've read it. I just wanted your opinion is all.
Yes. We have responded to that remark.
Okay. Commissioner Orth?
Yes, under what you're proposing, any use of the facility on the coast hospital district should require that the tax base remain within the district and detachment shouldn't go forward. Under that premise, I'm in the Brook Trails Willits area and I use the Willits Hospital, but often I'm off to Ukiah Hospital. And thereby, and so are many of the coastal hospital district residents. As a matter of fact, it appears that people who are going to be pregnant will need to go inland to seek service in the future. Are you proposing that there should be one district throughout the county because we all use the Ukiah Valley District Hospital in great numbers, even through people who use the Coast District?
No, I'm not suggesting that, and I'm not suggesting also that it's just based on use. My initial comments regarding the issue of use was that use is not the determinative factor. As we know, we pay taxes on lots of things where someone might argue they do not use the services at all. They still have to pay the taxes. That's the way society works. It's done that way so that when voters vote in favor of taxes, it will be people who may not use the services at all will still be taxed. It's a perfect example, of course, is the schools. But here, when the detachment proceeding was brought, when the petition was brought, the basis upon which the detachment proceeding was brought was that the people in the detachment area are not using Mendocino Coast Hospital. And that's not accurate. We don't have to establish that there is a use, but in fact, we have shown that there's a use. They are using the area. And so unlike the parent whose children no longer attend schools and wants to say, why should I, the parent that doesn't have school children anymore, pay school taxes? That's the way taxes work. That's how society is. We don't just tax someone based on how much use they have. We don't tax someone who's paying a school tax because they have 4 kids and someone who has 2 kids in the district pays less. The point is, when we have a tax, it is taxed universally for everyone within the boundaries of that district. So everyone within the boundaries of Mendocino Unified School District will pay the Mendocino Unified School District tax if it passes, whether or not they attend schools, whether or not they have children. And the same thing would apply for Ukiah Unified. So these taxes that are voted upon apply whether or not there is use. It is magnified when we look at the situation here, where we have a rural area that is being proposed for detachment, and in fact, in that rural area, not just that they're being taxed because they're within the district, but they in fact are using the services. And so we don't go just from they're being taxed because they're being taxed. We go from a situation of not only is the tax appropriate because it was voted upon, but also the tax is appropriate because the people within the area are in fact using those services.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
On the analysis, would you agree that LIMSWA, which is in charge of ambulance responses throughout Mendocino County and has provided, this is their map of service areas for ambulance responses, would you agree that that agency has the ability to further that analysis and actually set response areas due to time of response?
I think it would be appropriate to have Mr. Davy Beek, who is here, be able to address that. I know he was going to speak, so that might be, he would have more information than I would.
Sir, please state your name for the record.
I'm Davey Beek. I run the hospital ambulance service, and you all are looking way too familiar at this point. We're seeing way too much of each other. Thank you for hearing me, and thank you for hearing all of us this morning. The map you speak of, we run in a dynamic system, and if Coastal Valley says, I don't run in Wolala, well, I can pick up 5 or 10 times a year at least when I run to Wolala. We run calls in downtown Willits, downtown Ukiah. So it's, it's hard to say with hard and fast rules or lines on a map where our ambulance service serves. So I can't, they don't, we're all compelled to respond when someone calls 911. And we were talking about 10% earlier, 10 out of 80 calls were served by our dispatch to us. If you were one of those 10 people who made a 911 call from the Ore Valley and you were not receiving an ambulance from Ukiah, I think it would be very important to you to get an ambulance on scene to serve your emergent need. So, even if it's a small percentage, we do serve. We serve our whole county in a dynamic system. And, I'm sorry, Mr. McGowan, did you have something?
Well, that ambulance is going to respond whether the area is in the district or not in the district.
It is.
Because the criteria for
It is.
Dispatch is what is the nearest available ambulance.
It is. So should someone be willing to, by their own, to decide whether to support that service or not? That's what's, I think that's what a question here. Should people be able to say, I don't want to pay a tax because I don't feel it serves me?
It's, again, I think it's more a question of what are the proper boundaries of the district. We're not saying, gee, we don't think these people here should be paying a tax, but those ones should. The question before us, I think, what are the proper boundaries of the district?
Well, might the time to have addressed that would have been at the vote rather than post-vote. If you voted on a measure to pass or to not pass Measure C, wouldn't that have been the time to say, I'm abstaining from this vote. I don't feel it affects me. I think we should withdraw now from LAFCO. Not a year down the road when you realize that, wait a minute, it passed. Now I have to pay the $140. Is this the appropriate time, really, to address this?
I will suggest that people voted either for or against this measure without knowing that they were actually in the district. Because the statements are made in the response from the lawyer that, gosh, that's a line of type on the tax bill. Everybody in this area knew they were paying this tax. A lot of people, believe it or not, they write out their check for their tax bill without looking at 0.9 is going to the school, et cetera. They just don't, many people typically don't look at it in that detail. They write the check. What triggered this, no doubt, people suddenly got hit with a significant increase and they said, what's going on? You know, but this is all just kind of discussion points. It doesn't really go to what are the proper boundaries of the district or not. Just like the map on the website was probably misleading. If someone had wanted to go to the website to see, gee, am I in the boundaries or not, they wouldn't have learned that from the map on the website necessarily. The same thing, you can't assume that everyone who got a tax bill absolutely knew I'm in the district. That's all just discussion points.
It may be that they did not pay attention or opted to not pay attention, but there's also been a general obligation bond tax for the hospital district on that same tax bill for these individuals for more than a decade prior. There clearly is a statement that people believe they didn't know whether they were in or not, but I have yet to see in California where you are allowed to vote on a measure which you are not within the purview of that measure. And that's a hard and fast rule here in California on any taxation. 218 made that clear. And that was decades ago. So I understand that many citizens are absentee in their attention to the details of what governance is and how it functions, but that absenteeism does not change the reality that they were in there, and if they had asked or wanted to know or were concerned about that, could have easily had that question answered.
Agree, but now that it's come to their attention, the question before us, I think, is should they be in or out of the district based on what are the logical and appropriate boundaries?
But I wouldn't say that that question changed that reality. And if we're going to say that the imposition of a tax is the trigger for us deciding whether we want to be in or out, we're going to create a very interesting society.
But if they had simply wanted to be out and couldn't make a logical case based on other factors, it wouldn't go very far. I don't think Mendocino would be able to detach successfully, for instance.
Where is that line drawn?
That's what we have to decide.
And you know, yeah, and no pun intended, really. I mean, where is that line drawn? Where do we decide as a society that we pay taxes regardless of how it serves us? I don't know. I mean, and for you as a commission to decide to start making a precedent for that kind of a decision, consider it long and hard. It's important stuff. And who's next? What board apportionment or what boundary line adjustment is going to be next in your sphere of influence? You know.
So you're making comment, not really responding to a question?
I apologize.
Okay.
I apologize.
Sir, did you have something?
No.
Okay.
I just thought he might.
Any other questions?
I would say one more thing, I'm sorry, is that redundancy in emergency services is key. If you were to consider the Ore Valley and only having access from one side or the other, and on any given night, during any given condition of road condition, dispatch condition, call volumes, which we all know are really challenging on the inland corridor and in our county in total, I think that to keep all the emergency services available and coming towards you, and to be in support of all the emergency services, which may or may not be knocking on your door in the middle of the night to help you in your time of a heart attack.
Okay, hang on.
Go ahead, John can finish it up.
Well, are you suggesting in any way that coastal ambulances would not respond if this area is detached?
Absolutely
No, so
not.
we will always have the redundancy.
But whether we should have that service without support of it is a decision that you all get to make. Any questions?
Commissioner?
I have a question for Mr. Green. I think he probably wanted to answer it. Tomorrow, well, we know that the hospital's in dire straits financially, but tomorrow there's going to be a vote on a new Measure C allowing or approving a 30-year lease agreement with an affiliate, which is of Ukiah Adventist, which is also the hospital that these folks are going to predominantly. How is that going to affect the district?
You know, that's a long-term fiscal question I think the district's executive director and management is better off answering. We've taken a look at a various number of options, but our goal here was not to analyze the future of the hospital as much as it was to ensure that, you know, we had a viable revenue measure that had a set of defined services that the community would support and allow them the opportunity to vote on, and they voted affirmatively to support those services.
I know you're losing $40,000, but will the makeup be with this long-term lease? That's all I want to know.
I don't have the long-term projections. Perhaps the executive director does.
And I'm sorry.
I am Wayne Allen, the interim CEO at Coast Hospital. Could you repeat the question again for me, please?
Well, tomorrow there's going to be a vote, March 3rd, for the new Measure C, where the landowners will approve a 30-year lease with the affiliate, which is Ukiah Adventist Hospital. I just want to know how that would affect the district's revenues in the future. You're losing approximately $40,000 through this detachment. Would that be made up with this new lease agreement with Ukiah Adventist?
No, they're two separate issues. The healthcare district will continue as an ongoing entity and collecting its taxes and paying its debted obligations, so that'll be responsibility of the ongoing district. And the new arrangement between the hospital and Adventist Health, if that does occur, deals merely with the day-to-day operations of the hospital, salaries and supplies and those kind of issues. So
Would the vision be that you would reduce costs because of this new lease agreement?
would we have, pardon me?
Reduce costs?
Hopefully, there will be cost savings out of the arrangement. That will be one of the goals, and looking at that. But it does not affect the basic tax structure and debt
No, I understand
obligations
that.
of the
Yeah.
existing district.
But if you have an increase of revenue or reduction in expense, it's all the same.
Yes, and then the other important thing is the district is facing a significant seismic upgrading retrofit project that's got to be completed by 2030, or a complete replacement of the hospital. The seismic retrofit budgeted item is right now in current dollars, $24 million that the district does not have. And the rent payments will go to create an escrow fund to fund that capital improvement. So it's not going to be going to operations of the hospital. It's going to be capital improvements going forward so we can maintain that hospital. The Adventist Health arrangement is merely a lease of renting of the property. There's no immediate ownership purchase
No, I understand.
arrangement.
I understand. Well, thank you, Mr. Allen. No other questions?
For the CEO, your lawyer explained earlier that the existing Measure C provided services for emergency room services, I believe general operational services, and obstetrics. Am I to understand the obstetrics has been, department has been suspended or removed, and what kind of fiscal impact does that make on the
I can, give you-
funds that are collected?
I can give you that update. Last Thursday, February 27th, the district's board did meet and unanimously passed 4-0. There was one board member absent. 4-0 to close labor and delivery services effective March 31, the end of this month. That particular department's services, the number of deliveries was down to less than a handful per month. Not sustainable. It's been going on too long. It's a subject, issue that's has been dealt with by the district for the last 2 or 3 years and finally resolved. So it will be closing March 31, and we are working with alternative arrangements, training programs, and working with our ambulance crew to divert those expectant mothers to primarily Ukiah. We only have one scheduled expectant mother during the month of March, one. A couple months ago, we had 0. So the service basically was closing itself.
Okay, thank you for that. You said you would answer how much of a savings, or how much was that actually costing the district?
It was being subsidized about $2 million per year. Definitely not sustainable, and so that was the number.
Okay. That's it for now.
Sorry. It appears all the questions have been asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and we're going to, I'm imagining we're going to have quite a lengthy public comment period, and I have commissioners that are requesting a break, and we also need to give our staff a break as well. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. We will be back at 10:45. Okay, we're 3 minutes late. It's 9:48. So we're going to go forward with public comment. So you can come forward, take the podium, state your name for the record, and know you have 3 minutes. Sir, just one, oh, it's okay, come up, but we have a question.
Well, just briefly, Madam Chair, a question came up from another commissioner. That was the little hurdle there. And the county auditor controller has made a calculation on the property tax redistribution if the detachment area is approved. And of course we have legal counsel, but I believe state law provides that in these situations, the county in effect would negotiate on behalf of the district, but there really wasn't a negotiation because territory is not going from one district to another. It's simply not going to be in a district in terms of a healthcare district. So these were the calculations. It's approximately $5,000 in property tax revenue that would be redistributed. And so I think we have it in our packet that the letter from the county auditor that initially went out, starting a 60-day response period, and then the calculations of how that money would be redistributed.
Thank you very much.
For the
Thank you.
change in the detachment.
Oh, and then the County Board of Supervisors on February 25th adopted a resolution ratifying these numbers.
Yep, page number on that, where it was distributed.
I don't have it handy, but
And actually, if the clerk would like to go to the executive office, perhaps we can get a copy. That would be February 25th. I believe it was on consent calendar.
I'll copy of the reso.
Yeah. So that information can be entered for the record. And they'll be able to help you if you go down to the office and ask them for that. Thank you. My apologies, sir.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Please go forward, state your name for the record.
My name is Jim Hodge, and I'm speaking today for myself and 2 co-owners that I have, properties that are very close to Ore Springs Resort. And a couple of the comments I would like to make. One is with respect to these 69 visits to the hospital over there. I'm curious how many of those people also have homes in Fort Bragg? And is this 6 people that went multiple times, or is this 69 individual people? I myself, in times when we've had emergencies at our property, they've all gone to Ukiah. I have no residents. I and my co-owners, we have no residents in that section, so we get no exemption. Our property taxes tripled. And because we all live in Northern California, but we don't live in this Mendocino, we don't get a chance to vote on this. And I think there's a lot of people who, as you mentioned, that could be second homeowners or whatever, their primary residence might be in Sonoma County or someplace close by, but they don't have the opportunity to vote on this. Another key point that I would like to say, when it comes to a time of emergency, guess what, folks? These cell phones don't work in most of that area. If you wanted to call an ambulance, you couldn't call an ambulance because you have no communication. So if there was a key emergency, cardiac, stroke, whatever it is, and now time and distance become of the essence. I explained to you a story before about my mother-in-law that had such a situation with a stroke, but because she was able to get to the hospital rapidly, she was able to have the clot buster, and it saved her life. Another point is, if I were having an emergency, I would want to go to Ukiah, because if there was a decent chance that I would need additional care that would require, let's say, a life flight, I would want to be leaving from Ukiah to go to Santa Rosa, not from the coast up and over the mountains to get to Santa Rosa. So, I think that those are all like really key issues, and I think that the actual, the boundaries of this, just from a common sense standpoint, don't really make that much sense. If you live in that finger that's all the way to the inland side as opposed to being close to the coast, my family, we've never used the Fort Bragg Hospital. We've been to Fort Bragg a number of times, but we never used their medical facilities. Have always been in Ukiah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Hang on one moment, please.
You mentioned that your taxes tripled, your property taxes tripled?
Yeah,
Can you
roughly.
explain how?
Because of the cost of this hospital tax.
Because you have multiple parcels?
We have multiple parcels.
And you're
yes.
not allowed an exemption?
No exemptions.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Terry DeSilke. I live at 1180 Hoe Road out on Ore Springs. I just want to address two issues. One that I find very interesting ever since I've lived in Mendocino County, out where I live. I live in an area where it seems like maybe there weren't a lot of people before, so people weren't sure whether to have us be in Ukiah or Mendocino, so we're in the Mendocino School District. We're obviously in the hospital district right now, but we have a Ukiah address. We have a Mendocino phone number, but we're closer to Ukiah. So I find that really interesting just as history. And the second thing that I wanted to address was the inaccuracy about 100 people being out on Ore Springs Road where I live. Where I live in an area we call Turtle Creek, there are about 100 people, and that is from just the outskirts of Comchie to about where the Cooper riders live on Ore Springs Road. That does not include the 100 people every day that are at Ore Hot Springs. That does not include probably the 100 people every day at Montgomery Woods. And it certainly does not include over 100 people at Running Springs. I'm not sure how many people are being assessed this parcel tax in Greenfield, but I know there are some. So when you put those numbers together, there's no way there's just 100 people being affected by this. Or that would even go to Fort Bragg, because none of us go to Fort Bragg to go to the hospital. Thank you very much. I have to go back to work.
Good morning. Name's Tom Madden. I live out there, what they call the Turtle Creek area, I guess now. So apparently this hospital is having problems closing the obstetrics and Measure C itself, and now the Adventists, they're asking the Ukiah hospital people to run it for them, which is probably a good move. Yet I find it interesting they still have money to hire attorneys, which is not in the hospital. They're trying to, make sure that they have an income stream no matter what. And I imagine it'll be misallocated like before, which is why they're in trouble, why they need the Adventists. And the Adventists know how to run a hospital, so that'll probably be the end of the problems unless they keep the top-heavy administration in place. Other than that, I brought a map that shows Ukiah. You probably don't need to see it. You've seen enough maps. Ukiah is the place where that's why they have a hospital here and a hospital there, to serve people that are closest to it. How this happened is historical, because the Ore Springs Road goes back to the building of the Ore Springs Road. There was a time when there was no Ore Springs Road. Now there is an Ore Springs Road. It makes Ukiah much closer, much more convenient, and nobody would go to Fort Bragg. It takes an hour and a half to get there, as opposed to a half hour to Ukiah. So, yeah, I think we should be in the Ukiah district. Thank you. Bye.
Anyone else? Please come forward.
Good morning, Chair Brown, members of the commission. My name's Rob Leonard. My family has property on the Ore Springs Road, also in Mendocino on Little Lake Road, and then also Alder Creek, just north of Point Arena. LAFCO law sets, I had the opportunity, pleased to be before you this morning and have the opportunity. I have submitted written comments previously, but had the chance to be here today, and I really appreciate the opportunity. LAFCO law sets forth the process for a detachment. That process was initiated by the property owners. I think you have good staff work and findings before you, and it's time to make a decision on this. This process will go on as long as it's allowed to go on. The hospital district has resources with outside counsel, and we will go through numbers, very small numbers, as long as it's allowed to go on. It's time to bring this to a close. My family is more than willing to support the success of the hospital in the future as we see that it's appropriate. I have no reservations about paying the parcel tax on our Mendocino interests. No reservations whatsoever. Want to see the best outcome for the hospital district and continuation of services on the coast with the election coming up tomorrow. That is pretty much my comments. I have numbers that I could dissect and go through. I think you've spent more than enough time doing it. It's interesting to hear Ms. Wiles quote 8 emergency calls per year. When you look at a February ad in the Mendocino Beacon that was placed by the hospital district saying that they had 10,400 emergency calls or patients served over the last year. So it's, we're looking at less than 1/100% of the emergency visits come from this area, utilizing the district's own numbers. It's really about, it's not about the numbers, it's not about being served. Yes, I appreciate Commissioner McCowan's comments about people from Gualala or Point Arena being served. They're going to be served by the hospital. If they roll through the doors, they're going to be served. And the hospital's going to be compensated for those services. There's no question about it. So again, in closing my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity, LAFCO law sets out a process for detachment. That process has been initiated, and I think you have good staff work and findings before you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Randy Wood, and I live at 12345 Ore Springs Road. So I'm about a half a mile from the hospital in Ukiah and about an hour and a half from the hospital on the coast. I think I'm also in the Mendocino School District, if that's the case, which seems inappropriate as well. But it seems like kind of a no-brainer that we shouldn't be in the Coast Hospital District because we're really not served by it. So I'd appreciate it if it got changed. Thank you.
My name is Stuart Marcus. We own a retreat center. 2 of my neighbors have spoken earlier, kind of what's called Turtle Creek. I can't imagine if any of our guests ever had any problem that they would go to the Coast Hospital. It's just way too far, and it's also far from major transportation. It just seems like common sense. I'm kind of surprised that I'm here speaking about this again since last fall. Also, I'd want to point out for some of the arguments is that my wife and I also have a place in Mendocino on the coast. I was in an automobile accident last January, just last month and a half ago, and I did go to the Coast Hospital. But we also live on the coast, and I get blood tests at the Coast Hospital, but I also get blood tests at the Ukiah Hospital. It takes me 35 minutes to get to Ukiah. It takes me an hour or more than an hour to get to the Coast Hospital. I have no doubt when I'm at my ranch that I go to Ukiah, and anyone, my staff or guests would go to Ukiah. It's just common sense. There's a problem. We also have a Coast phone number, and the mail, we're the end of the mail from Ukiah, so we have a Ukiah address, but we're closer to Ukiah. But it's not convenient getting to the Fort Bragg Hospital unless you live there. So some of these statistics could be me getting blood tests, which could be 4 or 5 a year at either hospital. But that could skew some of your people going there, but If I'm going to the coast to visit or to dinner, I might go to that hospital, but that's not a practical thing from the location of our property. Thank you.
Morning.
You might want to pull it
I'm Mary
down.
Catherine Phillips, and my husband Phil and I live in Fresno, and we've owned property on Ore Springs Road since 1992. We're a mile from Montgomery Woods. We love it up here. We love coming up here, and we have family here. And in the past, when we've needed emergency services, which we have, we've gone to Ukiah. We'll shop in Fort Bragg, but we use the hospital here in Ukiah in the past, and we support the detachment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Gray. I live on Greenfield Ranch, and I'm here representing Greenfield Ranch, which has one assessor parcel in the district. It would take, well, it's 12 miles from that parcel to Ukiah. It's 22 miles as the crow flies to the coast, and you know, I don't know how many miles it would be to drive, but more than 22. It takes about probably 40 minutes to get to Ukiah. It would take an hour and 40 minutes to get to Ukiah, to the Coast Hospital. I really support all the hospitals and appreciate what they do. It's just this situation is, to me, it does look like a mapping error. I just can't see why we would be in this district. It just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment? Seeing no one else come forward. Commissioners, do you have questions of speakers?
Can I say one more thing?
Enter your name for the record, sir.
I'm Davey Beek. I'm the transport manager of the Coast Hospital. You're asking these people to decide whether or not to voluntarily pay taxes, essentially, as I see it. Taxes aren't voluntary. We're all compelled by the society we choose to live in to pay taxes when they're levied on us for services that serve us and services that don't. It's not a discretionary thing. Of course, I would opt out of taxes if I could, if given that opportunity. Do these people have the right to opt out? That would be my question. Is there any questions?
Yes, so one, if
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair will allow. Can you phrase that again? You said we're making an ask of who, and what is it for?
The Ore Valley residents.
We're responding to an application for
Whether they'd
detachment.
like to pay taxes to support our hospital.
Okay, I have another
you see
question
that?
as well. By the way, I want to recognize your service up and down the coast.
And
Yes,
yours
you
as
come
well.
as fall, you come as all the way down to Gualala, and we appreciate that. Out of the data that seems to be pushed around here, we hear about EMS visits to this detachment area. We hear about visits to the hospital. Can you just clarify for me, out of the responses that have been collected going to that detachment area, how many of them actually resulted in transport back to coast?
I can't speak to that. I have not done the research.
All right.
Yeah, we run there very far less than we run to the South Coast, you know. But once again, it is in our response area, and we would go when compelled, and they would be served at our hospital when compelled. And to say that don't worry, they're going to build a hospital and get paid. If any of you know the reimbursement rates of hospitals, they will go to the hospital, they will get seen there, and they will not get paid in a meaningful way. It's just the state of our healthcare system. Any other questions?
Just to comment that I, for one, do recognize that you will go where you are dispatched and you'll provide a superior service that may not result in a transport back to Coast Hospital if you deem it not appropriate. Is that correct?
Yes, and we will fly people, we will transport people from their homes to an LDZ, a landing zone, and we will fly them out if it's appropriate.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for yours. Thank you all for your service.
Can I respond to that?
I don't think so. I'm sorry. A new speaker can.
He got to speak a second time.
Okay, I'll allow you to come up, but restate your name for the record.
Yeah. My name is Jim Hodge, and I just wanted to respond to what he just said. And I disagree with what the question is. What the people that are here that are speaking about this, and I saw no one come and say, I live in that district and I would love to pay the tax. It's more about common sense, and it's about taxation without representation, right? We're being taxed on something that we're likely never to use. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ward.
I guess I do have a question, maybe for, well, Mr. Hodge is up here. Can you come up again, please? You talked about representation and stuff. The district's attorney made the analogy of school districts paying their fair share. So how would you make the argument there? We all pay for school districts, so we're not represented because we don't have kids maybe in the school. So what would be the argument?
Well, the argument might be that if I sold my house to someone, I might sell it to somebody who does have kids, and therefore it helps to maintain the value of the property. So in this situation, I'm not seeing that. What I see is that it may be a hindrance to me selling property because people are going to have to pay a tax for a service they're not likely to use.
But some people have argued they've been in their home for 30 years without kids and had to pay that tax for 30 years.
That could be. Yeah, I can't speak to that. Did you have a comment to that?
I do. Do you mind?
No, go ahead.
I'm Lisa Weger. I obviously have read pretty much everything that has gone on this whole time, and I did not respond to their that provision in their letter because my response was basically, she wrote that there's going to be Prop 13 or whatever about the bond for the state of California. That's absolutely true. We live in Nevada. We are not physically in the area. That is the whole point. And also, as another point, I didn't want to get into the nuts and bolts of this, but the whole question about serves is not about, oh, somebody was visiting the coast and hurt themselves and went to the hospital and then they noticed that they had an Ore Springs address. Or that someone actually has a house at the coast and they've gone to the hospital. My husband used to have a house at the coast. His primary residence is Ore Springs Road now. But if they had, and he used to go, there for blood work a long time ago. So they could look up and say, oh, here's Craig Blenko. And so there's all of these confusing issues about serves. But what we're really talking about when it comes to serves is we're talking about where do you go for emergency services? Where should the boundary be? I think I agree with Commissioner McCowan's point that we're really talking about the boundary. We're not talking about, they've kind of turned it into this tax issue. The tax issue brought it before us, but then once you look at it, you think this is unfair. We should not be, the boundary should never have been here.
My question was just the analogy between paying taxes for if you're in a school district without children versus your situation paying a tax without using a hospital. That was my question.
Well, I guess the answer is that assuming any of us could have children at any time, if you're living there and you have children or your grandchildren come to live with you or whatever, then you should, obviously you're going to be paying for that school district. And that's sort of like saying, well, if you never get sick, you don't have to pay for the hospital district because you never get sick. But we're not saying we never get sick. We're saying we get sick, we get injured. We've heard numerous people say, when I've gotten sick, when I've had an emergency, when I was sick, I went to Ukiah. So that's the distinction.
Okay.
I
don't
mean,
quite
does
buy
that
it,
answer
but
it, or-
No, it doesn't answer, but that's fine.
Well, okay. Any other questions?
I see none. No more.
Yeah, he wants, no more questions. Okay, thank you. And, yes, thank you.
And my response with the school district, it does keep up property values. If you look at how they value property within different areas, proximity to a good school district or being within a good school district does keep up your property values. When we talk about zip codes, that's all about the post office and rural delivery many times. An example for that, if you go Highway 20 all the way to the Lake County line, it is Ukiah zip code. Also going in on Potter Valley Road, Ukiah zip code. And so also prefix for phones. People on Highway 20 going all the way to Lake County, they're 485s if they have a landline, like Redwood Valley. So it's kind of a crazy mixture of zip codes. And a good example about taxation was Potter Valley Unified actually went through a vote where they de-unified from Ukiah Unified. And for several years, with that new district, they were not receiving the revenue that they should have received because they were using zip codes, not parcel numbers, in order to allocate the funding. So, it gets pretty crazy.
You trying to answer my question?
Yes, I am. And, I just feel, there's all considerations. We have been given many scenarios by both sides. Our business before us is not school districts. It's a detachment from a district,
We'd all agree
healthcare
to pay less taxes, though.
Oh, I don't know. Commissioner McCowan, and we are going forward, so any other questions of speakers? Do we have questions of the applicant or the hospital care district? I should say healthcare district. Supervisor McCowan, or Commissioner McCowan?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to maybe go back to the CEQA compliance issue again, and we do have some discussion of that on page 21 of the packet.
And I might say that it's at the top of the page, it's measures, is that the CEQA? No, it's the middle of the page.
Correct, CEQA compliance. And so there's a disagreement over whether Class 20 of categorical exemptions could apply, if I understand. And I think the district is saying because there is a geographical change in the boundaries, Class 20 can't apply. And I'd like to hear from legal counsel, am I stating that correctly so far? And then the follow-up would be, if that is their contention, then why does our legal counsel say, even though territory is being detached, the exemption can still apply? I just wanted to hear that explanation one more time.
Mr. Brown.
Yeah. The fact is that the hospital district has selected one specific categorical exemption to attack. And we are not relying on that particular categorical exemption. There's no reason. LAFCO, like situation, staff has reviewed their comments and has also reviewed the appropriate law. And we did provide some additional discussion in the staff report as to why the conclusion was made that the general rule exemption did apply. Primarily being that we could see no sufficiently large or huge impact. The only impact that detachment may have on the district is primarily financial, and yet that impact is relatively small compared with their overall income. Only if the financial impact was such as to make it reasonably foreseeable that there could be a significant change in the way in which the hospital had to operate as a result of this detachment, would we feel that there would be any reason not to use the general rule. That is not the case. Therefore, we as staff concluded that the general rule exemption from CEQA continues to be the appropriate use in this situation, because we can't see any physical impact on the environment arising, certainly not directly and also not indirectly, from the detachment from the hospital district.
Thank you. And your report on that, attachment 2, is on page 24, and one of the main points you're making is with a $55 million budget, the loss of $41,000 in revenue, which is 0.07% of their annual operating and non-operating, I guess, revenue, it's insignificant, basically. And there's nothing in the record whatsoever that states by anyone that there would be a potential for any direct or indirect change in the environment.
Yes.
Thank you.
That is our conclusion.
Thank you. Well, and therefore the common sense rule applies. Is that?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to ask staff, you were able to get copies or a copy?
I was able to get a copy.
Okay.
Was I supposed to get more than one copy?
Well, I'm not sure. This has to do with the Board of Supervisors action. Correct. So maybe we need to make some copies.
Well, I just need well, in our packets, 2 pages. We just didn't get a signature on the resolution.
Yeah.
Where is it referenced in the package?
It's page,
Page 28.
28, thank you.
and it is signed.
Yes, and I have
Okay,
the signed
That's all I need
copy.
to know. And there's no change in language.
Okay.
That works for me too, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'll just send this. Commissioner Orth, would you like to see the signed copies? Okay, that's unsigned, all right. And then I'll need to go back to the clerk for the official record. Commissioner?
So I think we've closed the public
We
hearing, or?
haven't quite yet, because we're still questions and what have you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Back to the clerk?
Yes. Then we have the signed copy. Okay, any other questions of speakers, applicant, healthcare district? Yes.
So my question is, if we are detaching them, or if we do decide to detach them and they're not part of a healthcare district, then are they not contributing to any sort of healthcare services at that point?
If I may, I think we have in the record that this detachment will not change the availability of services to anyone in the detachment area.
I understand that. As far as any sort of taxes going towards like Ukiah district instead.
Not to the Ukiah Hospital.
They didn't pass a Measure C for Ukiah Hospital.
Okay. And then my next question would be, are we looking to rezone them into a different healthcare district?
What we're talking is kind of apples and oranges. The Mendocino Healthcare District, Mendocino Coast Healthcare District, is a district. Adventist Health is a business, even though it's a nonprofit. So there's different entitlements to be able to do a taxation that would go, because one's a district and one's a nonprofit. Commissioner?
So in essence, we're basically here to decide whether or not we're going to divorce them from their district, but not marry them into another one. Is that the best analogy?
Correct.
Well,
absolutely correct.
Just to be clear, are there other healthcare districts in Mendocino County besides Mendocino Coast? That I haven't seen any.
No, we have healthcare clinics.
Right.
Some of them are federal, and if you didn't go federal or be recognized federally, then you are a local, and you probably no longer have your doors open.
But to entertain the commissioner's question, there's not another district to put them in at this time.
But the healthcare centers don't have the ability either.
Right.
And
FQHC.
so federally funded health centers were able to stay open. Any that depended on the state of California were not.
Comment would be that County Service Area 3 has the capability to pick up any power
right.
that a district can provide in the state of California, so County Service Area 3 can have service zones created in the future. If a area wishes to and votes to so apply a service area for an additional service, they can adopt a power under County Service Area 3. So there is an available district process where if a population area wishes to advance a service need, they can go through a process to do so through the county.
And we agree that is not currently a part of this process today.
It is not.
It is not. Okay. I think we're ready to close the public hearing. And once the public hearing is closed, we can no longer ask questions. I think we can if we need to get a motion correctly of our legal counsel, whatever that motion may be. But we're no longer to hear from the public or further staff comment and ask questions. So commissioners, I'm ready to.
Any more questions from the audience?
I have one more comment.
No, the public hearing has just been closed. So, Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think really there's been a great effort to try and divert us from what the actual issue is. And, you know, the assertions that if people in this area are using services on any level, then they should stay in the district. And regardless of how the question came to be in front of the commission, the question in front of us is this area properly in the district or not? And the most recent letter on behalf of the district, page 33 of our packet, section 4, people living within the detachment area do use district facilities. The last sentence in the first paragraph of that section, because people living within the proposed detachment area use the district's facilities, there's no rational basis upon which to remove them from the district's boundaries. But if you look at the map of the district, which is on page 75, it very clearly shows a peninsula area that runs out substantially east of the bulk of that district. And then if you look at any of the numerous depictions of the detachment area, and I think they're on page 37, 38, 39, they're attached to the resolution, that peninsula area is the exact area that's being proposed for detachment. And based on all the documentation in the record and where people predominantly receive their health care services from, it's pretty obvious to me there's a logical basis for considering this area for detachment, because again, what it's proposing is to simply remove that peninsula area, which is relatively remote from the district facilities. So I think it's pretty simple and straightforward. When we get to that point, I might suggest one addition to the resolution on the second page of the resolution, which should be page 106 of the packet. Point 2, the Weger Detachment from Mendocino Coast Hospital Care District is approved. The commission finds, and I would add one more phrase, if, maybe hear from council if it's appropriate, but the commission finds the geographical isolation from and limited use of the district facilities. So it would just make reference to the geographical isolation, which is why the EMS calls predominantly 90% go inland instead of coastal. I think this area was included for convenience. It just mirrored the school district boundaries. But, where we are today is just to decide, is that area properly within the hospital district, rather than just blindly follow the school district boundaries.
I would like to
Commissioner?
add on to Commissioner McCowan's statement about the geographical location as opposed to being in a geographical inaccessibility is what I would suggest, because that basically is what we're talking about with regards to EMS response from inside the district. It's not saying they can't get there, it's just relatively inaccessible in a timely manner.
So the geographical isolation and
Isolation's fine.
relative
Isolation works
inaccess-
for me. Isolation would work for me as well.
Okay. So that's your suggested changes to the resolution. I see agreement.
Is there a motion?
It's going to go into a motion. Supervisor, Commissioner.
I move to
Nation.
adopt the resolution as amended.
Second.
Would you name the resolution, please?
Sorry, resolution by title?
There's a number, I think.
I move to adopt resolution number 20, is it going to be 2019 or is that going to be updated to 2020?
I think it's our
The
fiscal
first-
year.
Yes, the fiscal year.
The fiscal year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I hang on?
Yeah, absolutely.
For everybody, just a moment. You need to go back, depending on your motion, to page 19.
Should it be a multi-part motion or multiple motions?
Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
can you please advise the commission on page 19 of our packet, there's a recommendation that the commission take the following action, items 1 through 4. Do we do that all in one motion, or do we take them separately?
I'm sorry, I don't have them in front of me, so.
Okay, well, the actions would be: 1, find the Weger Detachment from Mendocino Coast Healthcare District exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations, 15061B3, and approve the notice of exemption for filing, and 2, adopt LAFCO resolution, and the resolution number will be decided upon 1920-02, approving the Weger Detachment from Mendocino Coast Healthcare District change of organization application as depicted in Exhibit A. And 3, waive protest proceedings pursuant to Government Code 56663 unless written opposition to the proposal is received from landowners or registered voters within the affected territory before the conclusion of the public hearing. Or 4, adopt LAFCO Resolution 1920-02, denying the Weger Detachment from Mendocino Coast Healthcare District change of organization application. So we have ands and we have ors.
Right, they're conjunctive. So
Well, I think we just put a period at the end of point 3, and that's the motion. Except,
I believe that you, by adopting the resolution, you are effectively adopting items 1 through 3. The only thing I would add is that the motion should include, if you want to include that additional language in the resolution, that the motion should reference the fact that it does include the additional language regarding geographical features. But I think the single motion to adopt the resolution that also references the categorical exemption would be sufficient.
Okay. And the actual action number 4 is to deny the detachment. So I would really like to entertain a motion now. Sir?
As council suggests, I will submit a motion to adopt recommendations 1 through 3 to be termed as the adoption of LAFCO Resolution 1920-02, approving the Weger Detachment from Mendocino Coast Care District change of organization application as depicted in Exhibit A, with the modifications including geographically isolated in the aforementioned resolution.
and second.
So we have a motion and we
And-
have a second.
Well, I just wanted to verify that staff had captured
I would
the
do
amended language.
Yes, we have captured the amended language. Maybe clerk got this, but could I ask for the record, was that for number 2 on the resolution? The language to be added to number 2 on page 106?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions, discussion?
Who seconded
Um,
it? John?
Yes. Commissioner McCowan, who I keep calling Supervisor. Okay, we are going to have,
Well, I guess I do have a comment. I've
Okay.
been struggling with this, but I know we have the findings, and it is our responsibility for detachments. I just hope we're not setting a precedent for future detachments because taxes go up, but it is something that I do struggle with. I do want to see the hospital become profitable. It is an important thing. I'm hoping the lease agreement will improve services over there. We'd like to get them back paying LAFCO fees, that would be nice. But I believe it really boils down to the residents. Obviously, people aren't going to flood this chamber with, yeah, I'm supporting a tax. I support paying my $144. So you're only going to get people in here that obviously don't want to pay the tax or feel like they're being paying something that they don't feel they deserve. But I believe with all the evidence, I'm going to support the residents and detach it. So,
Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So your question earlier regarding school taxes, will people who have children or don't are scattered throughout the district, that, you know, it'd be very untenable to start saying hopscotch around of who's part of the district or not. And here we're talking about a very specific geographical area, and it isn't whether people like to pay taxes or not, it's are they properly in the district or not. And the thing that's kind of been most disappointing about all this, because the residents first went to the district and they tried administrative remedies to see if they could get some relief, and it kind of appears to me that the district board never seriously looked at the issue of equity and whether this peninsula was properly part of the district or not. This all could have been resolved more expeditiously, but this is the route the residents were forced to take. And the district's response has been to hire experts, legal and otherwise, and to fight over $35 million a year. And we've just heard that in the last week, 41,000 a year. And we heard that in the last week they've taken action to eliminate a very vital service to the people of that area, but it's not economically sustainable. The district was subsidizing that to the tune of $2 million a year. It just further makes the point, and thank you, Commissioner Ignacio, for bringing it up, that this small amount of revenue is not vital to the continuation of the district. And it'd be interesting to know how much money they're spending so far to oppose it, and they'll really kind of go over the brink if they take this action further, which I sincerely hope they don't. I think it'd be a huge black eye to the district.
well, my point was, if a school district is going to raise their taxes or a Measure C to improve their school district schools, and enough people came in and said, look, we'd like to pull out of this school district, and we had enough people to support it, would we be able to detach from that school district as well?
You'd have to look at the fact-specific issues, and
I'm just saying it would be bringing up a precedent, we'd have to look at it.
well, I mean,
I'm supporting this
Yeah,
motion, so I don't
I
need to
just
go
want
on.
to say, we're again talking apples and oranges
I'm just
when
giving
we
my
consider schools,
problems with it.
because that takes a vote of the people. It's a different state code for school districts and what they're under and what they can and can't do. Commissioner?
Just a supplement comment to Commissioner Ward is the difference, as Commissioner Bazzani pointed out, there would be another school district that they would be absorbed to. Even if they were withholding,
I'm
they
talking
would
about a
be.
new Measure C, a tax for just that school district,
I hear you.
not the other ones.
School districts are under different state code than districts are. Commissioner?
Yes, I would like to reverse this for a moment and look at, should we add this zone for service to the Mendocino Hospital District, meaning that if this was an application for them asking for service to the Mendocino Coast Hospital District, we would have to look at many of the same issues. And I believe that we would find that it would be very difficult to add this area to this hospital district for service.
Good point.
Well put.
Okay. We're going to go to the vote. Commissioner?
Just a real quick, Commissioner Worth would probably agree with me that when it comes to mistakes with with school district overlays with other districts, there have been plenty of examples with fire departments where they get overlaid with a school district. And in those cases, it looks like the districts work it out, sometimes with us, sometimes they have other agreements to rectify those isolated incidents where it's quicker for one district to make it in, but because they were brought in with a school district, it was, if nothing else, if not inequitable, unpractical. So I just wanted to point that out.
Good point. Okay. I'm calling for the question. Clerk, please do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Orth?
Approve.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Bazzani?
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio?
Approved.
Chair Brown?
Yes. Okay. We are now on to our next item on the agenda. So, detachment approved by LAFCO.
Do we want to hang up on our attorney?
No, I don't want to hang up on
Sorry,
him
you're on
unless
the
he
clock.
wants us to.
Unless it's free advice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
My advice in all politics is consistency and
Okay, you're being kicked out, I guess.
All right. Moving forward.
Oh, I don't know. Are you kicking her out, or are we just? Oh, no. You're good. No, you're good. Jennifer, you're good. He says, just stay there.
Or would you?
What's going on?
Commissioner Huff's now back in chambers as a result of the next agenda item, and they would like to have a decision from
Okay.
the chair
Sure.
whether.
And hang on 1 minute, Commissioner Orth? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought he was leaving the room. I was
So we
gonna
just
say-
need a clarification of whether Commissioner Huff's going to resume his seat or not.
Okay, what we're going to do is take a break, because we've got breaks. Commissioner Orth, we're on break, and we'll, 10 minutes. And Uma, the question is, can they exchange seats now?
Yes, it would be, you would just note that the item is over and that they are going to, that Commissioner Huff will resume his regular seat.
Okay, we need to get that into the minutes.
Yes.
Okay? So, you get to go back to your seat, that you were there, but in 10 minutes. is on the off-agenda item. Do we need a motion for that? And did we clearly give direction, or do we need to go back?
Is this at the beginning
We
of the meeting?
we voted to add it to the agenda, I thought. I'm not sure we actually then
We
had a
have a-
secondary vote.
Yeah, we had a
Yeah, we had a
secondary
motion.
motion and.
We did.
That's-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep,
Okay.
the
I'm
motion was.
just checking
Motion to
because
put it
my
on.
memory
Aging,
was.
short-term memory, all that, just making sure.
Look, Commissioner Orth, start off by just washing your hands.
I did.
All right, all right.
Done.
Okay. We're moving to item 7A, preliminary budget and work plan for FY 2020, 2021. And I only have half as much to say because I'll only be here for half the year. Oh, I thought that was a good joke. Only Uma laughed.
I got it.
Get it now.
All right, please go forward.
Thank you. I'll start by apologizing for having to push numbers at you after following that public hearing. The purpose of this workshop is to present the preliminary budget and work plan for fiscal year 2020-2021 to the Commission for discussion and direction to staff. The Executive Committee met on February 24th to review the budget presented to you today. I will start on page 112 of your agenda packet. The table 1 at the bottom of the page summarizes the fiscal year 2019-20 of the current year and the proposed preliminary fiscal year 2020-21 budgets. The column 2 has the adopted, indicates the adopted budget for the current fiscal year, and the next column, the third column there, is the projected year-end summary. The last column is the fiscal year 2021 proposed preliminary budget, which shows a estimated operations budget total of $174,350. There is also, we also have the special project, which is the Sustainable Agricultural Lands Committee grant project, which is $10,200 over 2 years. So in this budget, we assumed half of that, $5,100. That is a zero-sum project. We will be reimbursed that amount. Moving on to Table 2. Table 2 identifies the budget changes from the current fiscal year to the next fiscal year. So only those account lines that have a proposed change from the current fiscal year are included in here. For example, basic services, which is account number 5300, there were no changes proposed to that budget, so it is not included in this table. The difference from the last year, from the current fiscal year, is $14,102, and this outlines the where those changes occur. I will note that on the $7,000 for the work plan, there's anticipated to be a $5,000 rollover from this fiscal year to next fiscal year to account for the planned rollover of the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District MSR sphere update, so that we can make sure that we are consistent with the City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District projections and background information which are proposed for next fiscal year. Moving on to Table 3, which is on a page 114 of your staff report, or the agenda packet. This summarizes the projected and proposed budget and apportionment fee options. So the projected year-end budget numbers for this fiscal year would be $151,508. That is backed up by attachment 1 in your staff report that has the financial summary and projection numbers. We anticipate using approximately $16,000 out of the reserves, which was anticipated when the current fiscal year budget was adopted. That would drop our target, our estimated balance of reserves down to about $74,000. The reserves are established by policy, which our legal counsel, our legal reserves is $35,000, and the operational reserves is 25% of the adopted operations costs. So the reserves balance would be about $1,400 above what our target is by the end of this fiscal year. The previous 6 adopted budgets did include utilization of cash balances and reserves to meet the operational expenditures. Last year was the first year that we did actually have to dip into reserves, and we withdrew $4,000 to meet the operating costs through the end of the fiscal year. That was replaced with our first apportionment check of this fiscal year. So the breakdown for a proposed budget of $174,350, the last 5 columns break it out by apportionment fees at $160,000, $170,000, $175,000, $180,000, and $190,000. The table shows what our target reserves should be and how we would fall below or within that based on how much apportionment are adopted. We'll move down to the proposed work plan. There's no change from the 5-year rolling work plan that was adopted from last year. We propose doing the City of Ukiah, the Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District, and the Covelo Community Services District. The only change would be rolling the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District partly into next fiscal year, again, to make sure that we are consistent among those documents for the Ukiah Valley areas. Let's see, just for steps, this is the preliminary budget and proposed work plan workshop. Direction received from the commission today will be incorporated, and then we'll be sending the information out to the member agencies and scheduling a public hearing on the proposed budget and work plan on April 6th, with the final budget and work plan public hearing proposed for May 4th or June 1st. Sure there's questions.
I think that there are questions, but I think Commissioner Orth put it best at the executive committee meeting that LAFCO in the past, previous action was to spend down reserves and not to charge all agencies, it was less per year, and the LAFCO of the day did this with the knowledge that we would hit a brick wall. I don't think that was the language you used, but that it would come to a point that we would have to increase the allocations that each of the member agencies pay in the future at some point. And I think we're at that point right now. That we are going to have to, looking at our MSRs and SOIs and the amount of work that we have gotten done has been great, but we're going to have to look at an increase as we move into the future.
Well, I agree with you. We did discuss that. In retrospect, we should have raised our apportionment fees last year. Because going from 135 to 175 is a big jump. I mean, I'd be better off if we were 145 last year and jumping to 175, but that's going to be the killer for some of these smaller districts. Is $40,000 extra is a lot of money. But I don't think we have any choice, but in hindsight, yeah, we should have done it. I think, I can't remember what I did last week, but I think last year I was advocating higher apportionment fees, but.
I think we really talked about that. But I think we're at that point now that it's a serious discussion, but I feel.
So is there anything we can do to cut expenses to minimize it?
Yeah, not go as fast on our work plan. And there's a lot
you
of.
You guys have convinced me we're way up there with CALAFCO and all the others that we're so good, so we don't even have to do anymore for a while.
But the bottom line is, we have a lot of charges from the state, or mandates from the state, I should use that word, that we have to actually take the action, but we're not reimbursed for. And I think a perfect example is the redevelopment agency and the processes we had to go through. And
So I would assume that'll be in our memo to the districts and the cities that we have all these unfunded expenses.
well, I
that
think
we
it
have to
should.
cover.
Yeah. And I know how hard it is. Many of and we've looked at the MSRs you look at the water districts, you look at the cemeteries, you know, and we all have a big heart, you know, fire departments. It's really difficult, but we're in that position, and we need to seriously consider raising.
Was there any discussion, executive committee, of maybe going to 165 instead of 175?
Commissioner
So
Ignacio?
we did look at the possibility of 165, but still, we would be on a downward slope of our reserves.
Yeah.
And even the work plans we have here, we have in the works some other applications that we're anticipating that are not in the work plan draft. And the suggestion was that these 5 numbers be provided for the commission to discuss.
The reason I bring it up is because we're only $3,000 off our 25% for the operating reserve. So, I mean, it's close, and then we have to maintain it. But we can make that up almost by maybe reducing some expenses.
Well, that's 3,000 on the 175 option? You were asking about the 165
Yeah,
option.
wasn't there I thought there was a table on that.
There's a table on page
114.
114, table 3.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
So there is a 175 that still has a $3,100 dip into reserves as a projected dip into reserves.
Yeah.
And if I may, on the apportionment fees, Uma, are they by unit, and different agencies have different multipliers on the unit? What is the individual unit for apportionment fees?
It varies, and it's based on the annual revenues of each district, I believe. So
Okay.
it's split 3 ways. Special districts would be a third, cities would be a third, the county would be a third. And then the way it's broken up in each category is based on a factor that is provided by the state under statute, and it's, I believe it's based on the annual revenue of those specific districts.
You know, as the chair said earlier, this is something, we're of the day and age where we've had big hearts to our member agencies. This isn't a penalty that we're imposing. This is a positive thing. This will be money that will be well spent. We've demonstrated to the public that we're able to manage this fund, and it's time for this fund to grow.
I think you're calling it more of a pass-through than a revenue generator.
Microphone, please.
You're calling it more of a pass-through than a revenue generator, is that correct?
That's basically what I'm looking towards here. You know, I would encourage the council to seek something slightly higher than the 170, or excuse me, the commission to seek something slightly higher than the 175. Yes, I know it's going to hurt, but I think it would help coming forward with those projects that we're anticipating over the next 2 years. I'm looking for a cost recovery, not a revenue generator.
Can I ask him a question?
Yes. Yes.
1/3, I guess I didn't get 1/3 of,
Cities, county, and districts.
oh, I see, cities pay 1/3,
Right.
county, okay.
My recommendation would be the 175 this year and the 180 next year, because at 180, we start to accumulate above the reserve amount, and we could then fill that reserve again, and at least be a little incremental. I did put up the red flag last year that this was going to happen, indeed, that we were going to confront this, but it was reasonable to, you know, again, we're trying to be incremental, and it's easier to explain. Number one, the services LAFCO now provides, I mean, we've done the CSA3 with the Board of Supervisors. We've done a lot of things for the fire districts. We know our electeds are using the MSRs, and agencies are using the MSRs when they look at Mendocino operations and deal with a particular district or city or county. So our usefulness is, I think, becoming more apparent over the last 20 years. And 20 years ago, you know, LAFCO really was a laugh. I mean, we really weren't a known agency, or what we did or provided, what kind of services. The MSR process has, and now we're in the SOIs, it does show the value of LAFCO to the user base, which are all of us. And although painful to have to raise these numbers, I know our executive contract is still the same. It's not because we're raising, you know, any fee, you know, we're not padding LAFCO operations at all. We're operating. And I think that's what we've got to sell to our own districts, our cities, and the county.
I appreciate the commissioner's comments. And at the same time, to use your own example, if you go back to the previous page to table 2, account number 6300, just in a year, that thing has grown $2,800. That's almost that $3,000 difference. We're looking at the 175. So I know this is a workshop. We have a couple of months to discuss it. I would still encourage slightly higher.
But I'd just like to add that the educational programs that we have brought forward, and actually it's the certification that all district board members have to go through, we found that was almost not being done with a lot of the really small districts. They had no idea, so they were out of compliance with state law, and actually could be, those board members could be fined for not doing Brown Act or, you know, harassment training. You could kind of go on and on and on. But, you know, certainly the education, and we use those funds to do it not only in Fort Bragg, I think we did it in Willits, we did some in Ukiah through the years, and also board member training. So it's, you know, we tried to make use of those funds, and I think we have much better educated board of directors as a result. Oh. Commissioner?
I just wanted to echo Commissioner Orth's way of doing it. With the only way I would want to, if we went that way, I would just want to send the letter that we send out to the different entities that, look, it's going to go up, but I'll tell you, I look at when we raise our water fees or our sewer fees, and I always really hated councils that didn't raise them and then waited 5 years, and then the new council sits and then has to be the bad guy. I'd rather do it incrementally to everybody.
And twice as much.
There is another impact to our budget, which is our travel costs to go to meetings or whatever outside of the area. That might be impacted this next budget year. It might be reduced significantly as a cost.
Well, and maybe instead of 4 commissioners or 3 commissioners, we have 1, possibly 2 attend.
Well, I'm talking about the virus. We might not be sending people to out-of-area travel, potentially.
John had a question, and I'll go next.
Who's, okay.
Well, I think for 10 years now, the commission has done a good job of holding the line on increasing the apportionment. Our reserves were excessive, so we have drawn those down. We still have over 70,000 in reserves. We've never faced a situation where we were in any real budget crunch. We can always increase the apportionment if we think we need additional funding. It's not hard to do. We set the apportionment, the auditor controller, you know, sends out the bills or however that process works, and the districts, the cities, and the county don't really have a choice. They have to pay what the apportionment is. We don't have any real trouble collecting that money. So it's not a variable source of revenue like, or a volatile source of revenue like sales tax or something where it can dip suddenly from year to year. So I think that fact that it's a stable source, that we say what we want, they pay, argues in favor of being more conservative in raising the apportionment. We've also never used our annual budget in any given year, I don't think. You know, we always, my experience, we wind up with unspent fund balance that we roll forward. And although on page 116 it indicates that the outstanding bills are going to equal the remaining budget, on page 117, if you do the math of where we are currently with the budget and what is projected, it's actually projected that we would have a fund balance of roughly 8,000 at the end of the fiscal year. That, of course, could be somewhat more or somewhat less. And then we also have an ambitious work plan this year. Some of the toughest ones to do, the most complicated, City of Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, and you can throw the fire in as well, which there's a lot of dynamics between the City of Ukiah and the district area. So there's, you know, a lot of issues that I think have to be explored there. So I would think it'd be unfortunate if we dramatically increase the apportionment and then set that as the standard going forward for what may be a one-year blip where we have a more ambitious work plan that we have to accomplish with more complex issues. I would support raising the apportionment to $160,000. That's $25,000 more than it is now. I'll disagree that the worth of LAFCO has risen in the eyes of the districts that are held hostage. You know, I think there's been an incremental increase in people's awareness of LAFCO and what it does. I bet if you took a poll of the districts, most of them would be kind of doubtful. What value are we getting? What is this line item in our budget? And why did it go up, you know, 25% or whatever? So I would, and your point of raising somewhat incrementally, and maybe we should have started last year, but I would again suggest we go to 160 on the apportionment this year. And in the unlikely event that we're exceeding budget, we have 70,000 in reserves to draw from.
Couple questions. You mentioned we had an increase in legal fees of $2,800. We're anticipating an increase. Why?
That's what I stated.
Why?
I believe Mr. Brown submitted his new contract, I think 2 sessions ago that was approved.
Did we see a new contract?
Just to clarify, there was a contract amendment, but it didn't, it was to allow for special project billing. I have asked him for an estimate to allow for agenda reviews, which is something that was discussed during the Weger applications. And so this, and in anticipation of the Ukiah Valley area MSR and SOIs, there is additional money in his budget line to provide for more of his time, which would be anticipated. This number did not come from him. He has not been able to review it yet. This is the preliminary budget, so I did talk with him, and we are very close to exceeding, or we may have already exceeded the budget that we have for him, which is on an annual basis. We have used him a lot in the last few months. But again, I don't have his invoice for this last month.
But it was my impression that we were adding his expertise, but we were going to pass those costs on to the applicant.
For that contract
For that
amendment, yes.
particular.
Yeah. But I mean, his
But-
actual $600 per month, I didn't anticipate it going up $2,800 a year.
Well, no, that was the differences anticipated as it's described in here, and I believe that's how I phrased it.
Then shouldn't the 2,800 be also in reserve, in revenues?
I believe it's in the 14,100.02 at the bottom.
I don't see the revenues increasing.
So it would not be pass-through funding. It wouldn't be.
Be application
It wouldn't be
revenue.
applications. I anticipate that we will need additional time for the Ukiah Valley MSR SOI projects, which are funded by LAFCO, not as applications, so it's not pass-through.
You have a question
And
on that?
because of the difficult MSRs, SOIs, and possible other work that we're going to have to do, I think, it's my opinion, that the agendas need to be reviewed because of the wording. That can take an action and put it right back to the beginning.
Just depends on
if-
how much.
It isn't proper. So basically, you're saving, because we have 35,000, and I can tell you as a county supervisor, that's peanuts when somebody starts suing you and you need to go into court. But this is basically an insurance policy that we are going forward correctly. Mr. Winkle.
Doesn't county council review your agendas?
They have to sign off every agenda item, yes.
So my obvious question is, why do we pay somebody else to do that?
Because they're not reviewing ours. Scott Brown is our lawyer.
I understand that.
Did I
But you're
misunderstand?
talking about a specific task here
I'm
that I
ta-
always thought was handled by county council.
No, we have our own attorney. When she said that, she was talking about Board of Supervisors.
I was talking Board of Supervisors.
But doesn't, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're our own
Yeah.
entity. So we have our own attorney.
We no longer use county council as office, as our legal counsel. We have Mr. Brown.
Because we're an independent
I have to
agency.
catch up on that, obviously.
We're meant to be an independent agency, and years ago, the county did staff LAFCO, but that did change. I don't recall if it was state law requirement or
No,
just the way.
it was action by LAFCO, and it hasn't been very long. I don't think you were on LAFCO at the time the decision was made.
No, it was before my time, so that's over almost 30 years ago.
No.
25.
Didn't
Oh,
you
that-
have a period?
There was a period, yes.
Okay, whatever that period was, that's when the action was taken. I didn't mean,
There are some gaps in my knowledge.
yes, sir.
So there's nothing currently to prevent staff from consulting with the attorney on questions regarding the agenda, and sometimes they have. What I'm hearing, this new heightened need is driven by the complexity and contentiousness of some of the items that are going to be in the work plan. The remedy there is to decide what is a special project or not, and if we have to further scrutinize the agenda to make sure everything is legally up to snuff, that's part of the project, I would suggest.
And I'll just clarify that this number did not come from Scott. This is a number that I have asked him. I reached out to him to see if this would be appropriate in his mind as far as what we're asking him to do, which is above what we have done in the past. So that's a number that I can continue to refine with him, or should the commission wish, we can remove it.
But understood, but isn't it, this extra work, isn't it in connection with what we expect will be ultimately eligible to be designated special projects?
At the commission's will.
Yeah, well, I think the
But
commission
I
should.
still think that how you propose on an agenda item that's publicly posted is very important. And I do strongly advise that we have him go over our agendas.
Well, but this is driven by the fact that we think we're stepping into a legal hornet's nest when one entity in particular pushes their lawyer forward to be their advocate, and I think we've seen some of that happening. So there's heightened concern about dotting every I, crossing every T. Those charges shouldn't be borne generally by every LAFCO district and city. They should be borne by whatever entity is driving that need for that additional service, my view.
Can I make, since I started this conversation, I just want to say that.
That's fine. I defer.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jerry.
Please.
I'm just pointing because then I won't forget you had your
Thank
you.
We had a very contentious public hearing today. I think the agenda report was well done. Did Scott look at it?
He did.
Yes.
Did he make any changes?
Very few.
I just want to say our staff does a great job with our agendas. We, compared to a lot of other agendas that I see throughout the county, I think ours are the best. So I'm not saying that we don't need our attorney to look at it. I just don't think it's necessary to spend a lot of money to review them. And I agree with Commissioner McCowan that it should be a special project at that particular time. So saying that, if there's any more, I had some other questions, but I'll defer to you.
Just so we're all on the same page, do we have spending on the current budget for legal to date right now? Are we within budget? Or
We're right on budget.
Right on budget, and we still...
We have not received any
This
billing
month's.
for the time.
February.
Just February?
Yeah.
So prior to February, we're proportional for the third quarter of the year? Okay.
We did have $83 that was reallocated to lodging because he charged us $83 for attending the Cal Recycle. And I pointed that out last meeting, and we reallocated it out of legal.
Yes.
Could I just explain to the commissioners who are not aware of how the contract for legal counsel works, is that we have a contract for $7,200, which is $600 a month, and that estimates approximately 2 hours of his time per month. He uses that kind of as a bank, and some months are 3 hours of time with us, some months are no hours with us. So it accumulates throughout the year, and then we hit the threshold, and then he starts billing us at his hourly rate after that. So his hourly rate is, I think it's $250 an hour. To date, I think we are up against that threshold of having used our 24 hours for the year. But again, we haven't seen that invoice yet, so I'm not sure.
This might be a conversation on the next workshop next month that will flesh some of this out.
And bottom line is, it's majority of the commission as to how we go forward.
We blew an hour today just having him here.
Well, we could speed it up with straw votes just to see where we're at going forward.
Well, wouldn't he have been paid by the proponents of the detachment?
Today.
We have asked him to break that time out so that we can bill that time to the application. But we have also spent quite a bit of time with him working through some of the MSR questions and some of the concerns that were raised by the city of Ukiah for the sphere of influence and in anticipation of the MSR and sphere update next year.
And also other work, and whether it's stale or not.
Right.
I mean, there's been a lot of questions.
But that statement just made illustrates what's driving that cost, and it's not equitable to distribute that cost to all the districts.
Commissioner.
I'm willing to compromise with John and bring my recommendation down to the 170, because I do think our travel costs are going to be less than the budget currently shows.
I have more questions, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm trying to
So
watch
again,
the-
I'm getting old, and I remember I see these things every month. Don't we have 90,000 in reserves?
We do. We have 90,460.
It's here
Not
someplace.
70.
Oh,
We have 90.
Okay.
And this budget is based on 70, so I think we're still doing fine. Got $20,000 extra.
It's the 70,000, is that for next fiscal year, the start
Well,
of?
we haven't used any of that. It's been in West America Bank now for 4 years, and we haven't tapped into it.
But for the projected year-end budget, for the projected year-end costs, we anticipate dipping into those reserves 16,000. So that's what the 74,000 represents.
Well, we don't know, because this attachment says we're gonna end up with $8,000, $8,700.
$8,000 left in the budget, but not, that's still, we had anticipated withdrawing $24,000 from the reserves to balance the budget last year. So we anticipate that it will be $16,000, $8,000 less than that. But we'll still need to dip into reserves about $16,000.
Well, we'll see. My last question is, City of Ukiah is on the docket for this next work schedule. Are we actually gonna tackle it? We've had that discussion. They have to do their general plan amendment or whatever. So, I mean, this has been going on for so long. Are we just gonna be pushing that into another year? And if it's so, we're gonna save a lot of money there.
I did check with city staff when I started the budget, and they believe that their general plan amendment or update will be tracking along so that we can tackle the sphere update this next fiscal year.
And we will have it completed by June of next year.
That is the intent, and we are tracking with that so that we can work through their CEQA process with them, because that CEQA will be triggered by any kind of sphere update that is not coterminous with the city boundaries.
Yes.
Would the commission be okay with staff moving forward to the next workshop with both the 160 and the 170 proposals to illustrate what those would be in the final form for approval?
You got one vote for it.
Say that again, please.
Well, go forward with both the 160 and the 170 recommended amounts. That would reduce the charts somewhat.
The
Why don't we
next,
just go with 160?
Because I'm proposing the 170, not the 160. I'm just compromising.
Well, I would like to see maybe a draft memo to what you're gonna send out to the districts in the city and county, just to see how it feels. I know it's gonna be a hit, whether it's 160 or 170 or 175, but I'd feel a lot better knowing how you're gonna approach it with the districts.
I would be happy to work with you on a draft memo.
Comment? So I think one of the ideas that the executive committee looked at here was, and it's been suggested we could just raise it if we find that we're running short. It's not really easy to raise it mid-year. I'm assuming that's what you're suggesting, because that puts...
Well, no, but we have reserves.
We do have
that
reserves.
would get us through that year without any question, raise it the next year.
Right.
So would we be breaking any policy of percentage in reserves that either are for unanticipated, what is our policy? For legal counsel, we've got a certain amount and we change that.
25% for operating reserves.
Okay, 25%.
We could lower it to 20.
We could lower it to 10 and we would not suffer. Because we know where to go to get more revenue. It's not difficult.
We can go to the county.
Yeah, nothing makes us more popular than coming back year after year saying, just give us a little more, a little more, a little more. That doesn't sound like we're managing our future very well. I would submit to you that I would suggest that we come in at 170 or 175 even, to be able to, justify. I mean, we've all sang praises of our executive officer here and how well that the agendas, they're managing their office very well. And they're putting options, way more options than I wanted. I only wanted 3 to discuss. We have 5. And you could see we're getting into minutia of negotiating in between. I would suggest, and I respect the conservative approach. But at the same time, and I'm one of the juniors on the commission here, but at the same time, I see what's going on, and it's not fear that's driving, it's justification that I think it'd be money well spent if we stuck at least 175. That's my position.
Okay.
Well, and all that does is perpetuate having a bunch of money sitting in the bank that year to year that we don't use. And we have, I think, appropriately drawn that down progressively to get it to where it's more arguably reasonable. But knowing that every year we can go back to the apportionment and raise it if need be, we really don't need to have 35,000 sitting there for a general reserve, and then we've got, 35 designated for legal, I suppose. You do want to have legal on hand, and even though any one case can rapidly eat up 35, as the chair says, it's typically not going to do it in a year. So again, if the need arises, we can always go back to the apportionment and increase it succeeding years. So preemptively increasing it more than what we really need to have cash on hand to pay our bills in the current year, and having the money sit in the bank, I don't think that's necessary. So
Understood.
I'm trying to beat this dead horse, but I kind of like Tony's idea so I can get my hands on the difference, but I kind of feel like I don't want to send sticker shock to everybody. But again, I think as we talked about the letter, I think I'd rather get that letter that says it's going up, and it might go up next year, might not, but at least I've been put on notice, as opposed to nothing, then bam. I think that's the fair thing to all our member groups.
And actually, I think it's gone down.
So,
Yeah, it was 145 1 year, a couple of years ago.
yeah. So I think in that respect, I'd rather, I guess, look at the road ahead and go, we need to raise it, but again, send that letter out that says it might stay the same, it might go up, but for this year, it's going up.
Well, but boil the frog slowly.
Thank you.
So don't go up more than we arguably have to.
Thank
So
you.
Madam Chair, to move this forward, I would suggest a straw vote of each commissioner to state what number they would support, and at the end of that straw vote, entertain a motion to adopt one of the numbers to work on specifically.
So, sir, why don't you begin?
Oh.
There is no we're not taking action on this
No.
item today.
No, it's just an understanding of what we're going forward, and everybody's cards are on the table. I will support a 175.
170.
I'm either, again, 160, 170. I'd like to be more conservative.
Pick one, man.
160.
160.
We have to have one number?
It would be nice, just so we can all get an idea of where to go forward for the public workshop.
I'd go 160.
I'm going 170.
135.
I could have wrote that number down and showed it to you.
I'll go 160.
I'll go 170.
So add them all up and divide them.
So
We know where the swing vote is.
So actually, I would be happy to revise back to 170 then, because that seems popular between 160 and 170, and I think that's a good direction for staff to hear going forward. This isn't a decision, but I'm just saying as a suggestion rather than a direction from the commission.
Well, excuse me. Go
ahead.
Part of my decision, I'd like to wait a little while longer, so I'd like to see if we will end up with a $16,000 deficit, because our reserves are at 90, and see how these other expenses come out. I'd like to see what our attorney comes back with as far as costs.
And
It's a little premature.
Well, I don't think so, because we're moving forward.
Well,
And we have a process where in June we are adopting next year's budget. So we have to be serious, and I think staff's got great input back. We'll know more in another month, so that's April. We'll know even more by May, and May is when we're going to have to make certain decisions. So, Commissioner?
Well, and I think an important part of this, because I do really think what's driving this is that we know we have some difficult projects coming up that, we're going to be hearing a lot of legal arguments, like we did today, but it'll be a lot more complicated than what we were dealing with today. So the concern about potential legal implications is looming large. I think that's really an argument in favor of we really need to identify what are special projects, what do we think those are going to be, and let's take the action necessary to establish that so that everyone subject to the apportionment isn't paying for the costs that are driven by one or two agencies who are arguably in a better financial position to bear that cost than all of the member agencies of LAFCO.
Sounds like a CALAFCO summary.
But I really would like to see something maybe on the next agenda that these are the proposed special projects, and that probably requires a little consultation with legal counsel.
Well, I think we've got work plan information coming up, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the agenda items we haven't gotten to yet.
So our MSR for City of Ukiah, part of it could be a special project if we have to bring in more attorneys? Attorney to get a review, is that considered then a special project, even though it's just a normal MSR update?
Well, it's not normal if you have to fight with their attorney. Most of these are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We've already said if there's going to be a change in the SOI, that would be a cost that would not be borne by LAFCO, but I think what we're talking with special projects maybe goes a little beyond that also.
Well, how do you suggest we do that?
I think staff in consultation with legal counsel could bring us some options. Yeah, I want to agree with the comments. I think several of us have said it. All of the staff reports are very well done. They're very well written. They're very comprehensive. They're, I think, easy to follow. And we hear that, yes, the attorney reviewed it. The work had already been done. We have very competent staff working for us. So I trust them working with legal counsel to bring forward reasonable recommendations for special projects.
I agree.
I will add that we did talk with legal counsel, though, about before we prepared the staff report. So there is quite a bit of value in having that ability to discuss with him before we put our packets together and prepare our staff reports.
Did you remind him that this is Weger and this is LAFCO, and to answer his questions would be separated so he'd bill us differently?
I'll be sure to work with him on the invoices.
Okay.
Well, just a point of direction. Staff is looking for direction on whether to proceed with preparing for a public hearing on the draft work plan and budget for April 6th, or would you like to see it as another workshop item again before we do a
I think what I'm hearing from everybody is another workshop.
Okay.
With the public hearing to be held in May. Resets.
I'd like that.
Per our policy, we're required to hold two public hearings, one on the draft budget and then one on the proposed final budget.
That would be June.
So yes, our policies say that we have to adopt by June 1st or the first meeting of June. So.
Well, what I thought I was hearing from everybody and assumptions is that we'll have a preliminary for April. And the draft budget public hearing will be May, with the final public hearing, the first meeting in June.
Okay, thank you.
And
And
But
approval.
And then we'll approve after that public hearing? Does that
Yes.
meet with?
In June.
Okay, I understood the policy was we had to have 2 public meetings prior to June.
Well, we do. One public hearing's on the draft, and the next public hearing is on the final.
But you're saying the one on the final, isn't that in June?
Yes.
Yeah, but we'll have
But
a
not prior to June?
Well-
How does the policy read? Is it the
It's-
public meetings prior to the June meeting, or just prior to adoption?
We have to adopt the budget by June 1st, or the first meeting in June.
Right?
And then we have to have we are required to have 2 public hearings, one on the draft and one on the final.
Okay, so June
all right.
1st meets that timeline?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
And then we have the workshop, which we started this early in the process so that we have 1 month slush to within the process somewhere.
Oh, I think we had slush today.
We're having 2 because we're going up $40,000. You gotta think about that.
Sounds like Jerry just went to the 170 number.
Nope.
That's how my math works.
So what are we on? We had a vote here. What was it, 160?
That was just a
170?
polling, and then, there's no action on this item, it's just direction or
And why did I
suggestion.
even say? I'm like John, I'll go 135.
I'm sure you would, but thank you for participating.
So our direction is to work with the 160
10
and the
minutes on that.
170, and to further refine with legal counsel and bring it back for another workshop at in April. Is that correct?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
So directed
So directed. By the commission.
by the commission.
And I'll remind you of that. Okay, moving forward as quickly as possible. Nothing's been quick today. It's probably one of the longest LAFCO meetings I've been at. Yeah.
Which
Got
is
45
what,
minutes.
12 minutes?
Yes. Yeah, they're gonna be kicking us out. So let's go to and we'll cut this short, but we'll go 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. Can we do that fairly quickly?
Very quickly, for active proposals, we have sent a letter to Mr. Moore's, an incomplete letter essentially saying that we need additional information. No change to other applications on hold or future proposals. The work plan, the administrative draft MSR, a sphere update has been provided to the Mendocino City Community Services District, and we hope to have that as a workshop item for the commission at during the April meeting. The other 2 we are still working through.
Can you tell me what the deposit was for Moore?
It was $3,500.
$3,500.
And he paid what he owed us.
So we immediately withdrew the $610 that he owed us.
No interest.
Another quick, actually, update on the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. We did hear from their lawyer who requested that us a little extra time to get the information to us because they're working through refinancing their bond as well as a water rates or a sewer rate study. So they will have the information to us by the end of March. So we can proceed with that one. And that's all I have. unless there's
Okay,
questions.
executive officers report.
The only thing I have for that is a reminder to please get your 700 forms to our clerk. They are due by April 1st.
To the clerk and to the county
Yes.
clerk?
And
Both places?
And it is the commissioner's responsibility for both, yes.
Oh, okay. I give you one, but I think I need to give them one.
And you're looking for wet signed, even though they're already up with the state, correct?
Correct.
Right.
We have to have those on file in case someone asks for them.
Okay, committee reports, executive committee, basically, we just hashed over what we had at the executive committee meeting, with the budget, proposed budget and work plans. So can I ask the policy and procedures committee, did you
We met, we saw the legislative
Platform.
Right, that
platform
you
today,
approved?
and then on the other areas, the area of interest policy and the,
Aging applications.
yeah, we need to talk with legal counsel, so we kind of
Okay.
kicked those.
Using legal counsel?
I know.
Jerry.
I did not.
Jerry. I'm in shock.
Well, why do we even have a darn thing? We just forget these things. We don't need them.
Yes, we do. Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for not attending that meeting. I wound up staying in the office until 8 a.m. working on another document and kept going the rest of the day. Could have gone to the meeting, except never looked at my calendar or remembered that, oh yeah, meeting in Willits
Well, I
today.
figured we saved an hour.
Well, I was just going to add, no doubt, business was conducted more efficiently. Thank you.
So.
Well, we missed you, though. We missed you.
And I always love going to Willits anyway.
I don't mind going up, it's just coming down, and at night, I feel like I'm a slot car, you know, and I'm going, oh my gosh, one mistake. So, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Great meeting, very
Good
well
job.
done.
Well, thank you. I don't,
I'd like to thank staff for the whole public hearing the staff report was excellent. It really was. It gave me all the